Good evening. I'm Eula Clark, Mayor of the City of Stuart, Florida, calling to order the regular meeting of the City of Stuart Commission, January 25th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. at 121 Southwest Flagler Avenue. City Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clark,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Here.
Commissioner Bruner,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald,
Here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Let us all stand. Let us consider peace and unity in our community and in our nation as we pledge allegiance led by our Vice Mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Today we have no proclamations, but I do have a proclamation. Should I mention that during my comments? Or?
Absolutely. You can mention whatever you want.
Okay, I'll mention it now. In our community in Martin County, we've had the wonderful blessing of having folks at the state level on the status of women I guess you wouldn't call it appoint. They've declared Miss Thelma Waters of Indiantown, who's a longtime resident in Martin County, to be one of the women, I'd call it a woman of distinction for the state of Florida. And there's going to be a celebration on January 28th, virtually online with through the State Department from Tallahassee. And there's going to be a setting out in Indiantown at the Timer Powers Park. And many folks will be there. And I'd like to go there from our city of Stuart and attend, and also bring in hand with me a proclamation just acknowledging this great award for Ms. Thelma Waters. So if my board would agree with me to do that, I'll have the word in based on the acclaim that the state has given to her, and we will send that off. And you can all look it up. It's E. Thelma Waters receiving this Woman of the Year award.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, when's the date of that?
January 28th.
I certainly agree. That's fine.
Okay, so city manager and I will work out the words to the proclamation, and I will bring that with me in honor of Ms. Thelma Waters of Indiantown. Thank you. No other proclamations are listed on the agenda, and there's also no presentations tonight. Is that correct, city manager?
That's correct.
Although I think Mr. Freeman would have loved to give us a wonderful presentation. He looks ready. No, I'm just kidding. So comments by city commissioners. Commissioner Bruner?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Can you use your microphone?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. First, I wanted to say, and then I have something else I wanted to talk. When we get to the discussions and sorry about that, deliberation, I have a topic that I would like to discuss, if that's okay.
Would you like to add something to the agenda? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And what is that?
Okay, what,
And
sorry,
it's
thank you.
regarding,
Sorry.
you have the lease in front of you, and I wanted to,
The green market?
yes, yeah. that
You'd like
we-
to add a
we could-
discussion and deliberation to tonight's meeting?
Huh?
You'd like to add a discussion and deliberation
Yes.
to tonight's meeting?
That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Okay.
And,
Did I just get that printed out, or did everybody print it out, or did you? I
no,
didn't get that.
You
city-
just got it. It's new.
I don't have that, city manager.
I have an extra one. You got it? Yeah, pass that to,
Thank you.
Oh, she's got one.
You need to get this.
I
You
got
can
one.
play that musical chair. We'll give it to the city manager. Oh, you take one from Becky and give it to Sue.
And there's one more thing. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know if you all saw it or not, but Eve Samples on Facebook, she's now with Friends of Everglades, not with the press anymore. They're so fortunate to have her. Anyway, she held a live meeting on Facebook talking about the dangers of the algae blooms, and she had Rob Lord, president of Martin Memorial, and she also had Dr. Paul Allen Cox is his name, and he was featured in the documentary, The Toxic Puzzle. I think all of us saw that. But anyway, as I was watching that, and it just got to me afterwards, Eve says regarding to the cyanobacteria exposure is that the water management system doesn't prioritize the human health and safety. And I'd like for us to talk about that, not today, but just to have it in our mind. Because what Commissioner Matheson has done is to keep this out there all the time now. And this is so dangerous, these toxic algae blooms. Wait a minute, I had something else I wanted to say. I've written it down. But anyway, I really fear with the blooms that we have, that it spreads in the air. We don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, the damage that's been done. And I was also thinking, just how desperate are we? Not desperate might not be the word, but how bad do we want to get that cleaned up, that river? I mean, I was thinking, are we willing to just put signs all over the river that says dangerous, don't get near? 20 years, what has that affected us? But it really got to me. And I think we need to keep doing it, keep everything out in the forefront. And Commissioner Matheson, I just want to tell you how much I thank you for what you've done. You've done that, and we just need to continue that.
Thank you.
I think 20 years from now, we're going to be very concerned, and I don't want to wait till 20 years, the damage that they're saying it does to the brain, the Alzheimer's, ALS disease, Parkinson's, kidneys failure. It's neurodegeneration diseases, destroys the nervous system. And these scientists are now saying it's, they really believe that it's the dolphin in their brain that they're going to be showing up on this. They really think that some of them do, that the dolphins are carrying it now. But anyway, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bruner. Commissioner McDonald?
Oh, yes, thank you, Mayor. Couple of things. One is, I guess I got four things I wanted to briefly touch. One is, this morning was my first meeting back on the MPO, and it was a good meeting today. We approved their tentative work program, and amongst other things, it was really great to see how many projects are in the tentative work program for the city of Stuart that are being funded over the next few years, including things on Willoughby Extension, on issues involving the Roosevelt Bridge and the left-hand turn lane, landscaping issues, those right-hand turn lane heading south on Cantor Highway. But we also had a discussion, and Commissioner Matheson had brought this up as well, and sits on the MPL, about looking at the ability to do 3 lanes turning left from Cantor Highway to US 1. Long story short, it's not really practical. So it can be done without right-of-way purchase, but it really doesn't, it actually would not make it any, the way they have to time lights, it would not be better. But one of the things that we did talk about was the possibility of looking at that intersection and making that intersection a MPO priority in the future, where we could possibly get the right-of-way to make a 3 lanes turn. But I also had suggested that if we're going to look at, the MPO is going to look at that intersection, we really should take a look at not only that intersection, but all the way from US 1 to Palm City Road. We've really got to deal with Palm City Road from, just from a US 1 perspective. That hot right is dangerous. It's getting more dangerous as we have more traffic. And be honest, I can't believe nobody who's been hit and killed crossing Palm City Road because of that hot right. So I'm hoping to, over the next year, get this put into the MPO as an MPO priority, to start really looking at this whole section of road there, because it needs to be taken a look at, because from a pedestrian safety point of view, it's very dangerous, and it's also one of the most heavily trafficked roads and intersections in Martin County. I think what they say, 45,000 cars a day go between Cantor Highway and the Roosevelt Bridge on US 1. So it's an incredible amount of traffic that goes through that intersection every day. Next thing is, I've been in contact with Michael Roberts, I think I saw him here, regarding the Road to Victory Military Museum. And I've talked to staff, there's been some issues involving the operators in the museum, and which Michael does not operate anymore, but about not being kept up. Staff has already sent staff, the city manager has already sent staff out there to look at the issue and work on getting it resolved. Next, kind of in the lines of, since we're right there at home at Memorial Park and Flagler Park, been seeing an increased amount of homeless people, and it's a challenge, but I'm starting to hear more and more people not wanting to use the park because of it, and I don't know what the answer is. These folks don't have any place to go, and which is very sad, but I was wondering, maybe we could reach out to like Tent City Tent City Helpers, or there's also a ministry up in Port St. Lucie that does a lot with the homeless. Maybe we could reach out to some of these folks and see if we can help getting some help, because it's, just relocating people doesn't help. It just moves one problem to another, one place to another. So, but there may be something that we can do to get these folks some assistance, because it's not, if the parks can't be used for their intended use, that's a problem too. So it's and then finally, I see we have Chris Rudiger from the police department. Just want to thank the police department for everything they do. Thanks for keeping us safe, you and all of your associates, your colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one happy update for the board and for the public. As a vice president this year of the League of Cities, we're already beginning to follow legislation that's being filed, bills that are being filed by legislators, especially those of our delegation. And Representative Overdorf has already filed HB 2057, an appropriation request for our alternative water supply, $500,000. I think it's just great to see him do that so early out the gate. We don't have a companion bill filed yet by Senator Harrell. This is going to be a challenging budget year, so I hope that it survives. But it's nice to see that Representative Oberdorf is fighting for us already out the gate. I don't want to extend the meeting too long, but I also was going to ask for a D&D item this evening to briefly touch on. I know I had brought it up last meeting comments, our single-use plastic ordinance on public property. I want to make sure that we are paying attention to the ordinances that we've put in place, be able to look at them in the clear light of day and address whether or not they are working, what we need to do to make them work better, and I don't want us to have any rules on the books that are not being enforced or selectively being enforced. I just don't think that's good policy. For instance,
What was that? What was it?
our one ordinance, single-use plastic materials on public property. I know there have been some comments about the Stuart Green Market, perhaps. I know that at the MLK Festival, which was wonderful, vendors there were selling meals and providing single-use plastic materials on our public property. So I just want us to soberly look at our ordinance and decide how we can go about making sure that it's actually enforceable, if it is at all. So I'd like for a brief discussion on that this evening. As a matter of business, I'd like to pull number 2 on from consent. I also wanted to congratulate and thank Commissioner Vice Mayor Matheson. I saw in the news your boat tour, told us about it, but wonderful that you are continuing to champion the issue of our river quality and bringing in other stakeholders. Commissioner from Miami, I'd love to hear a little bit about that. I'm sure you'll talk about it in your comments, but kudos and great job, and thanks for the fighting that you do. And then finally, to kind of pick up on what Commissioner McDonald had said, I know that out of our vision meetings with you, Madam Mayor, that we did earlier this month, I wanted to kind of pick up on some of the common themes. I watched all of them. I thought we all, had a similar vision. We all had very complementary ideas, which is great. And so I'd like to tackle a couple items. I too have been noticing increasing visibility of unsheltered and homeless or other folks in the community. And I think it might necessitate us actually just having a dedicated workshop where we can discuss, bring in some of those local agencies and organizations and see what's possible, what could be done. And then perhaps have a continued discussion around housing. We've approved a lot of housing in the last couple years, and it might be nice for us to assess what inventory is going to be built, what's coming on market, and what perhaps new opportunities we have. I've heard some signals that the new Biden administration is looking to provide federal resources for housing for local governments. Perhaps that's something we can start to kind of get in line for. So I'd like for us to discuss housing maybe in relation to our homelessness issue or just as its own standalone in the next couple months. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. So you're asking to add the single-use plastic matter to today's discussion and deliberation or to another agenda?
To D&D for this evening, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then, all right.
Also to pull number 2.
And to pull number 2. Okay. Vice Mayor Matheson.
Well, we should wish him a happy birthday as well.
No, oh, yeah, well, I was gonna do that.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So, well, yeah, before, well,
I heard the mayor's going to sing.
okay, yeah, I know. Troy, that's okay. Sorry.
Your comments were over, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for the birthday.
Okay.
Well, let's see where to start. I'll try and be quick. To touch on the water, there's a lot of stuff, as was mentioned, has happened over the past week with the waterways. And coincidentally, a lot happened last Thursday, all on the same day. I know Commissioner Bruner may have mentioned it, but one of the amazing thing that happened that I was sad to miss was La Plata Flats and the wetland
they're gonna go
restoration that occurred out there. That was over 6,700 acres of what used to be natural wetlands, and it was restored by the South Florida Water Management District in conjunction with Martin County. That's going to hold and naturally purify a lot of water and rejuvenate our aquifers. It's everything that really should be happening all over the state of Florida, and that's right here in our western backyard. It's something that's been on the books for years. It's a SERP project. It's part of Indian River Lagoon South, and it's incredibly important. I was sad to miss that ribbon cutting of that, but as Commissioner Meyer pointed out, on the same day, we hosted a Miami commissioner who has some local ties to the city of Stuart, Commissioner Ken Russell, who is interested in the problems with our water quality up here, and as well wanted to share some of the problems that they're having with their water quality down in Biscayne Bay. They had some fish kills over the past 6 months or so, mostly due to lack of oxygen down there. And one of the causes, so believed, of that lack of oxygen is seagrass die-off because of kind of hypersaline conditions. solution to that would be for them to get more water. And we have a ton of it that we don't really want here during the wet season, to put it all real simple terms. So we're hoping to be able to work together. We have, building this bond, bringing City of Miami to the table, to, speak up when, in the fight to have more water sent south their way, and discuss some of the bottlenecks that are created by our own doing of why water can't go south, and hopefully we can solve those issues. The other thing Commissioner Bruner talked about was kind of the toxic puzzle and how dangerous cyanobacteria and microcystin can be in this blue-green algae that we do face in the summertime here. The toxic puzzle was done and produced before 2018, before that massive algal bloom. And, over the past few years, they've been looking at everything from bioaccumulation. We had Dr. Edie Witter from Orca come here and discuss at one point in time uptake in fish. And this was now a year and a half ago, proved that it's in fish livers, it's in fish fillets. And, we've read other reports of, lettuce that are irrigated with, water containing microcystin, that the lettuce will uptake it. So, just keeping that, the dangers to human health on the forefront and the topic of discussion is frankly scary. But we have to keep it as a hot topic and keep thinking about it. Real quick, the lake is at 15.58 feet. We haven't been receiving any discharges, but we are still incredibly high. About 2 weeks ago, it was roughly 15.68 feet. So it hasn't dropped much. Again, we're not receiving any discharges, and so we hope that the lake level does kind of drop a little faster over the next month or two, but we're still in a scary position. Commissioner McDonald and I, as he talked about, were at the MPO earlier this morning. We had a great presentation by Secretary O'Reilly, and I know we're going to thank him later in the agenda on the work he did on the Roosevelt Bridge. And we also approved their kind of 5-year work plan. And one of the things that Commissioner McDonald touched on, I'd like to bring up was, the possibility or now the approval of US 1 right turn lane south on Decatur Highway. And with that coming up, as you were saying, we've got Palm City Road with a hot right where it encourages traffic to drive down Palm City Road coming southbound on US 1. Well, now that project will begin funding in 2024. It'll be quite a few year project just to create that right-hand turn lane. But that does open up the discussion as to what can happen, with that hot right. Is there a way to correct that and hopefully get something on the MPO priorities list that would come subsequent of the right turn lane to increase cars to take US 1 to go all the way to Canner instead of funnel and use the shortcut of Palm City Road there. And I'll just mention, I don't know if you were paying attention during the time you weren't on the MPO. I don't know that I would have been, but there was a study done by the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council of looking at Palm City Road with a complete street point of view and integrating some of those concepts into
I knew it was
the
done. I hadn't
traffic
seen
light
it, though.
there. And so, we can revisit that study, through the MPO together. Other than that, there were some nice improvements that are going to be coming up. The other one you mentioned is Willoughby Road. Again, these are long-term projects, but the funding begins in 2022 for Willoughby Road to extend all the way to US 1, but realistically, you're looking at 8 to 10 years. The funding will begin in 2022, but that's a long-term project. There's some gaps in the sidewalks along East Ocean. That will be funded and completed in 2023 by FDOT. So the other one that I was really excited about was the continuation of the East Coast Greenway, which so happens, we've approved a resolution in support of it. That East Coast Greenway, which they aptly named the Sailfish Capital Trail, would go over the old Roosevelt Bridge and connect, the peninsula of South Stuart to the peninsula of North Stuart. And this is in rough areas between a 6 to a 12-foot bike multi-use path. So that has, funding begins in 2026 for research of how that would be done. And this is the entire trail, but the highlight section right through city of Stuart would be over the St. Lucie River. So again, that's something when my daughter's 18, she'll be able to jog over the river maybe. But, that's just a brief update from what's happening with the MPO. These projects are fun to see long-term into the future, what'll happen. And I think that's all my comments for today.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Matheson. I'll start my comments by saying again, happy birthday to you, and wish you all the best. And it's a wonderful thing for you to have you here in our commission and for you to be celebrating a great milestone in your life. So congratulations and happy birthday. So again, Commissioner Matheson, Vice Mayor Matheson, thank you for coordinating with our Special Services Department and getting the City of Miami to come up here and to, again, have the river out front. We had lots of coverage on it, and people are noticing what we're doing, and it was a good thing. It was a good morning. I too missed the event with the county, but we had to take care of our own business here at the City of Stuart. But thank you so much for organizing that and working with that. I think it was Commissioner Meyer, somebody who mentioned about the alternative water supply. Well, I went out to the legislative delegation and presented on behalf of the City of Stuart. Limited presentation, but I think I got to say water like maybe 20 times in the little time that I had to speak. And so the message was there that we're asking them to both Senator Harrell and Representative Oberdorf, as well as Representative Snyder, to continue to work on our behalf, and we appreciated what Representative Oberdorf has committed to so far. So we really appreciate being a part of the legislative delegation. With regard to the Martin Luther King events in East Stuart, and I'm so glad that you were thinking of the ordinance and going through that, not just with that event, but other events in our community that we're constantly looking at that. I don't know if we need to I don't know if the vendors at that event and all events, when they have their permit, that they get the paperwork that says this is what's happening. And of course, we're in January of 2021, so we do need to make sure that we're following up. But that was a great community event and truly a time to bind and to foster and to maintain and to continue unity in our community. And we appreciate everything that all the departments did. The police department was out there early in the morning, putting out cheers, doing different things. All of our departments were active, whether behind the scenes prior to that or on that day. And we just appreciate the African-American citizens of East Stuart for coordinating with other agencies and other people to come out and do that event. So it was very good. The speaker was the Honorable Anthony Anderson from the Martin County School Board, so that was a great event. I also had the pleasure of going to Seminole Street to the River House opening. I think Commissioner McDonald was also there. And this was an arts moment for me. They were dedicating outside, right along Seminole Street, artwork by the bronze sculptor Jeffrey Smith, and he had 3 pelicans. I don't know what type of pelicans they were. I'm just going to say birds, just to be sure for right now. And just a great piece of artwork if you're ever walking along that street. That adds so much to our streetscape and to the idea of having arts in Stuart. And the developers of this project were very well in tune in doing that, and we appreciate them putting it there and inviting us to be there. I'd like to pull items 3 and 4. And at this time, even though I'm not pulling it, it's included with the minutes, but it's the minutes that included my vision and meeting with the commissioners, and I'm going to be meeting more with the city manager to just try to see if we can pull some things together, because of all of the commissioners who have interests, you know, we're going to have to look at in the future budget items or just how we can work some of these ideas for the year. And as Commissioner Meyer said, things like housing, homelessness, those are things that we need to probably, I think last year when you were mayor, we were going to try to do a summit, and then we had COVID and we just didn't get a chance to do a lot of things. So there's some things that we need to work on. And of course, we had the whole affordable housing idea, whether or not how we're going to try to incorporate some policies. So that's something, but I just want everybody, especially those who are in the public and those who may be listening on Zoom, please look at these minutes and see what was discussed between each commissioner and myself. And if you have anything to add to the vision of the city of Stuart, we'd also like to hear that from you. But at this time, I'm asking to pull items 3 and 4. And we will, and you were asked to put item 2, which would be the appointment of some municipality to the LPA, well, to the planning board, yes. And then I want to say that in the future, February the 2nd, at the MLK event, I met the new school board superintendent, and I'll be meeting with him on February the 2nd. I'll be meeting with the school superintendent. And also, I think earlier on, we had talked about the proclamation, so that's taken care of. I have nothing else except that. So at this time, is
Mayor?
there no other comments by any other commissioner? Commissioner Bruner?
Yeah, I got caught off guard with going first, because there's a couple more things I wanted to.
Okay,
say.
well, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yes, please.
I wanted to thank whoever did our City of Stuart, the booklet. Everyone should get that, the annual report. That was really well
yes.
done. And the algae bloom, I wanted to, our Commissioner Matheson, to have this. $2.2 million to monitor the algae blooms. Out of this book we all got, Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute and Institute for Sensing and Embedded Network Systems. But what they're doing, they received the $2.2 million grant for a project titled Harmful Algae Blooms Assessment of Lake Okeechobee. And I want you to have this, maybe you, or if you've got this book, you might be interested in talking to him, and we see how it is at the end of that project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I kind of forgot something, but I just wanted to, again, thank those who serve on our boards. And we had a meeting prior to this meeting where we appointed a new Community Redevelopment Board Chairperson, Mr. Chris Lewis, and a Vice Chair, Mr. Tom Kempenny. And I just want to thank them and all the members of their board for their volunteerism, and it is so important. At that meeting also, we approved a budget change for approximately $75,000 to do crosswalks in East Stuart And these crosswalks have a theme and color scheme, and there was some safety and some other issues involved in trying to improve the community. Persons can go and look online to see how that presentation went, as well as prior presentations that Ms. Pinal Gandhi-Savda has worked with. And I'd just like to give Ms. Pinal a badge of honor for the things that she does and for the visioning going through for the city for 2021. So thank you so much for what you do, and thanks for our volunteer groups who participate and help us do the planning and some of the work of the city. So thank you so much. Are there any other commissioners with any other comments, or should we go to the city manager? City manager?
Nothing, Madam Mayor.
No comments?
No comment.
No.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, pulling items 2, 3, and 4, and adding for discussion and deliberation the green market lease that's in front of us, as well as our plastic ordinance.
Second.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board regarding the approval of the agenda as,
Seeing no public comment, you would do it all in favor.
and, okay, so if there's no public comment? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, please remind us that we have 2 additional items and that we're going to be pulling 3 items. Now, we'll have comment from the public, especially comments that are not related to any items on the agenda. If you have comments and they're related to an agenda item, we'll call it up at that time. But if it's a general comment, we'll just let it go. So far, I have 1 green card from Michael McRoberts. Sorry, Michael. Michael Roberts. Thank you. Just come up, state your name, and thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor and Commissioners. First of all, I'd like to say that you paved in front of my house. It's a lot smoother, and I can go a lot faster. So, thank you.
Don't go too fast.
It was awesome. Please accept my comments expressing my heartfelt disappointment over the condition of the Road to Victory Military Museum. It appears that over the last year and a half, the conditions of the museum has deteriorated dramatically and access to the public significantly restricted. Just last weekend, my wife and I went to Memorial Park to walk our dogs and visit the memorial, and noticed that the museum yard was parked full of broken down vehicles, trailers full of construction debris that seemed to be unrelated activity at the museum. Also while there, a woman and her veteran father were visiting the Navy Memorial Monument behind the museum. They were visibly distraught about the haphazard drop back of the memorial and the conditions of the vehicles around the museum. I've also gotten many phone calls, emails, and Facebook posts about the condition of the museum, and I've asked people to start sending them to the city. Evidently, everybody thinks I'm still running the museum. It's been more than 14 years since my wife and I, along with several volunteers, approached the city about building about the building and the property at the museum. Coincidentally, at the time, my wife was also working with the city leaders about the beautification of the park and the revitalization, and part of the steering community, resulting in the beautification of the park and the memorial we have today. I can honestly say I go there often and talk to some of your city workers. They do an amazing job keeping that park up. I go to a lot of memorials, and I've never seen one kept in the condition this one is. So when I could work out an agreement for the use of the building and the land, it was like a dream come true, especially since it appeared that at the same time the city and the museum had the same values. We're both extremely proud of the moment we were able to work out an agreement with the city and watch the museum grow to honor veterans and educate the community about their service. And I know many of you have been to the museum, and I've met you personally there. Despite being no longer involved, we hope that the museum will be able to thrive again, but in the meantime, it appears the city may need to be more involved with the current operators and the board of directors to ensure the building and property are up to better standards for the community and veterans that we honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And thank you for your previous work with the museum. Thank you. Are there any other comments? If you have not given a card, you can come up and speak and fill out a comment form. If there are no other comments, let's move to the consent agenda. We're going to be, if we approve the consent agenda, we will be pulling items 2, 3, and 4.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of consent calendar less items 2, 3, and 4, therefore 1, 5, and 6.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, are we
You need
going to be
public-
having a roll
You need
call?
public comment.
Public comment?
Public comment.
Oh, sorry, public comment on the agenda, consent agenda? No public comment, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Item number 2, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I pulled this just to say thank you to my previous serving board appointment, Mr. Campbell Rich. Mr. Rich was a force on the board. I was very proud to have him there, and I was sorry when he tendered his resignation for no other reason other than just his own safety with COVID, not being able to attend in person, and unfortunately because we're unable to do virtual meetings, he was unable to continue serving in his full capacity. So, but I have no less faith in my new prospective appointment, should you ratify this evening, Ms. Jackie Vitale, a close friend and confidant, a wonderful visionary, small business owner, and also a force in our city, and I think she'll do a very good job helping steer the future of our city. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Rich and to thank Ms. Vitale for throwing her hat in the ring and volunteering, and look forward to having her serve.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I would like to make the motion to approve the appointment of Ms. Jackie Vitale to the local planning agency.
Second?
I will second
Seconded by Commissioner
McDonald.
McDonald. City Clerk?
You can be an all in favor after public comment.
Okay, any public comment on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I had pulled item number 3, which is the design of Guy Davis Park, which is, we have like several names, Guy Davis Park, 10th Street, Recreation Center. So, City Manager, I just wanted to pull that so that you could explain the process of where we are now with the park design and what will flow over into future times for budget purposes.
Yes, ma'am, as soon as the attorney reads the resolution.
It'd be
Sorry, please read it.
It'd be resolution number 03-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, requesting authorization to negotiate for RFP number 2021-200, design of Guy Davis Community Park improvements to the top-ranked firm Calvin Giordano and Associates, Inc. of Port St. Lucie, Florida, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, this item is the authorization for this city to negotiate with the top-ranked firm. As you'll see, it's just a simple resolution, and the discussions will be around the scope and around the pricing costs. We also plan to approach them about a phased approach where we'll ask for a design concept and engineer's probable cost, and come back to the commission at that point for a budget amendment to pay for that from current fund balance from the CRA. And then with that, if accepted by the commission, we would move forward with financing options for this particular project. The project was originally, when it went out on the RFP, was for baseball fields, but as time has gone on and some discussion about baseball fields and having too many baseball fields, and input from the 10th Street staff, who advised that they actually need a multi-play field, like the football field that they can do lacrosse and soccer and football and stuff like that on, because those are the high demand fields that they have right now. So that's what this RFP went out for. As with any company, the submitters all submitted very nice packages, but those are sales pitch packages. So what they pitched was very, very beautiful, the company that was picked, but there are things in there that we would probably ask for them not to have in the scope. For instance, a skateboard park would not be something I'd want in the particular in the scope due to some liability. I see Mr. McDonald, or Commissioner McDonald, raising his hand over there with a question.
Yeah. Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Actually, I had considered pulling this item, but I spent quite a bit of time talking to Pinal about it. So, but since it is pulled, I'll just bring up a couple points that one of the things that I'd like to just ensure that when we're negotiating the scope of work is that we take a couple things into consideration. Not only the cost of not only a phased construction approach or phased design and construction approach, but also an approach that not only looks at the cost, but cost of maintenance as well, so that we can keep an eye on the cost of maintaining the park once it's built. The other thing is making sure that in the scope of work, we look at all options for entry access, not just from 10th Street, but also from Dixie Highway. And so to make sure that we have that in. And then one last thing, as far as looking at is the running track. I understand it's not a regulation size or something. And I don't know if there's a way that can be corrected without tearing the whole thing apart, or, and replacing it, the whole thing. It'd be nice to actually have a regulation track if we're going to have a running track. But the big thing is I want to really make sure that we nail down the maintenance, construction and maintenance cost.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll look at those issues. I know this company is really big on using artificial turf. They've done those in several cities throughout the state. I have some concerns about that because the rest of our fields there are all grass. And so we would have to buy new equipment to maintain the artificial turf, and then we'd be having two different types of maintenance deals going on.
I did a lot of research on artificial turf about 3-4 years ago when we were looking at that as an option, and I love the idea of the artificial turf because you can do softball, baseball. You can take a multi-purpose field and do pretty much anything with it with artificial turf. But there is, though you don't have the grass cutting maintenance, you do have the cost of replacing the turf every 10 years, which
And you also have machines that have to pound the beads back in and everything else with it. So there is some other equipment. There's also equipment people don't even realize is that you can't use regular cleats on those fields. So kids would be required to have 2 pairs of cleats. One's if they're on the grass field that day, because we have 3 other grass fields, and one's for the artificial turf. So it does make a difference in the grand scheme of things. I will tell you that in the RFP, and so what has been proposed is the entrance off of the Dixie Highway side with some parking and a festival area mixed into the parking lot there. There's the multiplayer field and then an enhanced playground, keeping the current equipment that we have there because it's pretty much brand new equipment, but adding some additional equipment and some covering on the ground so it's not sand. It would be like the artificial material for the playground covering. A festival type area with a undulating stage. I just like saying that word because it was in their plan. Stage area over there as well, and some new bathrooms over on that side of the park facility. And then there's some nature stuff mixed in there, like nature walks and that sort of thing.
I'll go ahead and move for approval of item 3.
Let me just make my comment. Thank you. Anybody else has any other comments?
I'll second the commissioners for discussion.
Okay, all right, thanks. So, yeah, so I had pulled it because, of course, we've been going back and forth on the 10th Street for a long time, and we know that we have the basketball that's been, when is that going to be completed? By the end of this month, or?
I don't know, maybe 30 days, 45 days. Milton
Okay.
probably has a better timeline. He's
Okay, so we have that part being worked on, and then, of course, this is coming through. What is the timeline to firm up things with these guys, and would it require having some more input from any residents or ex officio, small key group of people to try to delete some things, like you're saying, no skateboard or,
So I'm hoping to have staff push these meetings, once you guys approve it, quickly so that we can be back to you within 60 days. And then there is a requirement within the contract that we would do with them for them to do public meetings. Did we do 2 meetings? 2 meetings with the public.
2 meetings with the public, okay. And you know that I'm trying to work on my survey, and I'm going to be sending out something to people just to, even to ask them to give me some ideas to finalize my survey. But so I'm going to be contacting them and letting them know that this is coming up too. So that'd be a high priority to put some input on right away. Are there any other comments or anything from the public on this matter? Public, okay.
My name is Kyle Osinga. In reference to the park there at 10th Street Rec Center, I don't know the full proposal, but if they can look into self-weight gym sets that use your own body weight to work out. They're pretty common in Port St. Lucie where I live, and most of the city parks, they're there. It'd be something, I think that would be good wellness and good.
These
thing
are
to have.
outdoor things?
Yep, they're made for the outdoor, and they use your own body weight. I mean, there's all kinds of different ones, but they're pretty nice. So.
They have them in Miami as well, at some of
Yeah.
the parks
Simple
there.
stations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a station. They use your own body weight to either do leg squats or chest presses, just different stuff, and it's just good for wellness.
Okay, thank you, officer. Are you recognized, Miss McBride?
This is Helen McBride from Flamingo Avenue. What about the building, the 10th Street Rec Center building? You didn't say, I mean, you're just going to leave it in the condition it is?
Currently, yes, it's not in the scope on this particular project.
And you do realize how old and it needs a lot of work,
I know it
in
was.
my opinion.
I know, it was completely gutted and remodeled, I'm not sure, 15 years ago, I think it was?
15 or 20.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. I know there are still discussions that are going on about the gymnasium over off of 7th Street, MLK.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that are variables that we need to hash out before we get into the building aspect, because if there's a brand-new gymnasium over off of 7th Street, that could be a after-school competitor for us, and then there may be something different with the current facility that's there. So there's other actions in play before we can make a decision on the current building. At some
Right.
point, whether the building is remodeled or enhanced or whatever, that will be done. That's part of the plan. It's just not part in this first phase.
It's the after-school program and for the children, but you also have the senior citizens. And it really, we love our children. And I mean, and we do, when the children are there, we move wherever we have to move to. When they're not there, we move back in the room we're usually in. And, you know, it's just, which we don't mind. I can speak for my fellow seniors. It's just, we've been waiting, and if anyone knows me, we've been waiting in that, and when you're, the fields. Are you keeping the Sailfish baseball fields then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, as of now, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Do we have any other members of the public who have a comment on item number 3? Could you come up, Ms., you can come up and you can fill out the form. You're recognized, Ms. Brinkley.
Hi, Gwendolyn Hall Brinkley. And my question is just simple. But years ago, there was a charrette that was formulated for East Stuart. And it had the different improvements. Is this being done according to the charrette, or is it a totally different plan?
So if I recall correctly, the charrette was about the neighborhood. I didn't see anything specific to the 10th Street Center and the charrette. There were previously approved from previous commissioners plans for the 10th Street Center. One of them, I remember, went before a legislator trying to get $1 million for artificial turf for baseball fields over there. So there have been different plans over the years that have been changed, and then now this is a new iteration of that plan. But I don't recall the 10th Street Center specifically being in the charrette. The rest of the neighborhood I do recall being in there.
Yes, that was the 2003 charrette. And then since then, we've had some potential plans which led to this actual thing now. I think Mike Houston had done some things for us informally to let us start considering some ideas of what we might want to be doing at 10th Street. But those were not adopted plans, those were ideas. And those are also to help Mr. Kralski and his group when they were working on trying to send something to the legislator to see if we could get some funds for the turf and the grass, and those are all a part of discussions. And I have in mind to send and ask people in the community, and if they know or if they want to, please contact myself, the city manager, any of our commissioners, any of our staff, to please let us know. And we're working towards this thing, and if people want to get the paperwork for this firm in Port St. Lucie and what they've submitted and what the selection committee has looked at, and we will be working with them to go through with a plan for East Stuart. So that's that. I think that, does that cover the reason why I pulled this? Oh, sorry. Yes. I think I just wanted to make sure that this was fully explained and the status of where we are, and thank you so much, City Manager. So we have Resolution 032021. Did we have a motion in a second? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, City Clerk?
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Okay. Oh. All right, so the next item is item number 4, which was, I pulled that one also to ask, it's regarding Resolution 09-2021. If the city attorney could read the resolution, and then I'll pose my reason for pulling this.
This is resolution number 09-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to adopt the 2020 updated Martin County Unified Local Mitigation Strategy Plan as the official document for inclusion in the statewide hazard mitigation strategy, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you so much. So I'd ask City Manager to explain about this LMS strategy plan just a little bit for those who are not familiar with it.
So this is the local mitigation strategy update. It's updated every 5 years. This came to us through the county's EM director and our Captain Derek Ortado, our city EM director. The county, in conjunction with municipalities, puts together this plan or any updates every 5 years. This particular plan was submitted to the state, who accepted any changes that were required or done by the emergency management folks, and then adopted by the county. We don't have to adopt it, but it's recommended that we adopt the plan. It helps us on our federal grant applications, and we can score extra points or not get those points based on the fact if we're in compliance with the county's our local mitigation strategy plan.
Thank you so much, City Manager. Does any of the board have any questions with regard to item number 4, the 2020 updated Martin County Unified Local Mitigation Strategy Plan?
Madam Mayor, I'll move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any comments from the public with regard to item number 4? on the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk, Mr. City Attorney, can we do all in favor, or do we need to have the clerk?
There's no money, and so you can do it as whatever your discretion. It's just a resolution adopting an agreement.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you so much. So we're at the end of the consent agenda. We're into the commission action items. Item number 7, acknowledgement for the DOT for the bridge work. Resolution number 17-2021. City Attorney.
This is resolution number 17-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, thanking the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, District 4 Secretary for his personal involvement in the Roosevelt Bridge repairs, providing an effective date for other purposes.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I had asked our city manager to add this to the agenda for this evening, as at the legislative delegation, you may recall, our delegation approved, called for a similar resolution, voted on a similar resolution, thanking not only Secretary O'Reilly, but also the city of Stuart, and our public safety personnel, as well as FDOT District 4 staff for working together to expeditiously repair the bridge and communicate with the public. I just wanted to make one suggestion, if possible. I would also like in the resolution, if we might call out specifically Representative Oberdorf and Senator Harrell, as they were both intimately involved in this process and assisted with the organization and the public communication, as well as, if we could, to specifically call out the FDOT District 4 staff, as well as our staff and public safety personnel.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so that would go under separate whereas columns, and you'll work with, so we'll,
If you need me to
give the language?
give the language, I would ask that it not be in the whereas, but perhaps section 1, I beg your pardon, let me pull it up quickly. Section
Okay.
1 calls out Secretary O'Reilly specifically, perhaps we could say, and staff. And then section 2 acknowledges the relationship between the city, District 4, perhaps we could have staff in there. Perhaps we could add section 3 and amend section 3 to be section 4. The new section 3 would say, the city commission hereby acknowledges and thanks State Senator Gail Harrell, State Representative Toby Overdorf, and thanks them for their partnership and communication to our public. And where we could put city staff and public safety personnel, perhaps in section 1 or 2.
We'll work on rewriting. We have to rewrite on the floor.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Is that-
There's-
yeah.
Thank you. There was a motion and a second, is that correct? No?
Well, I'll move approval with that, with those edits, if somebody will second.
Do you have a second?
You second
No.
I did, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there another comment on resolution number 17-2021?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir?
I just wanted to say, I'll keep it very brief, but Jerry O'Reilly, Secretary of, Region 4 Secretary of DOT, gave a amazing presentation this morning on the extraordinary efforts that went through to get the bridge back up and safe. And I just want to commend them, because not only did they get the bridge done quickly and getting it safe, but they've done a great job of reassuring the public that the bridge is safe, because I know there was people that was concerned about going over the bridge in the future, and I would say, based on the amount of cars I've seen on it lately, nobody's worried about it, so they've done a great job.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments, Commissioner Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'd just like to touch on what Commissioner McDonald said about the presentation. We did have the pleasure of hearing Secretary O'Reilly speak and debrief us on what happened, and the speed of their response was very impressive. They surpassed even their high expectations of getting the bridge completed in a timely manner. I think we would have been looking at end of February at some of their first estimates. The technology has changed with how they build segmented bridges. When that one was built over 20 years ago to now, and a tendon did totally break in that bridge. You know, thankfully, again, no major catastrophe, no one was hurt. That bridge is completely sealed. They're going to be updating their inspection process. The tendons were replaced using the current methodology to fix the bridge and the way bridges are built nowadays. And our other surrounding bridges, a lot of the discussion and questions for the secretary were, can we be, assured that our other surrounding segmented bridges are safe for public use? And to quickly summarize it, they are. They wouldn't be open if they weren't, obviously, but it was a excellent presentation, and their response was unprecedented, really, for what happened here in our backyard and how fast they handled it. And again, thank you to our Stuart PD and our city staff, for working with FDOT and handling it in such a way that we did.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I must say that in light of everything that has happened in 2020, and also, of course, the pandemic, it was just simply astounding on the day when it happened, seeing, what is it, CNN, NBC, just knew it went all over. And people were calling, wondering if Stuart was falling under. And so it was just a major, major thing to know that happened, like Vice Mayor said, in our backyard and right here in front row to City Hall. And to know that the DOT has gone through this and worked on it very professionally and handled the public very well and has taken care of that fear factor, and people are back using the bridge. Much, much appreciation, and I'm absolutely in full support of this resolution going forward with the amendments suggested by former Mayor Meyer, Commissioner Meyer. And so at this time, we have to approve this resolution with any comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public on this resolution acknowledging the FDOT for their bridge work? Hearing none, and there's no money involved, and there are no other comments from our city commissioners. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Our next item is item number 8, amendment to the land development regulations, residential infill stormwater management, resolution 2453-2020. Attorney?
This is ordinance number 2453-2020 on second reading. An ordinance of the City of Stuart, Florida, amending Section 6.03.00 of the Land Development Code entitled Stormwater Management of Chapter 6 entitled On-Site and Off-Site Development Standards in respect of standards for residential, single-family, and duplex infill development, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you.
Are there any changes on this ordinance since the last reading?
Thank you.
There is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Clark and City Commission, just for a piece of housekeeping initially, it's now 2453-2021. If the Commission recall, this was first brought to them in October 2020. There was a number of discussions around it. It did get approval on first reading. Staff looked at the comments that were made and attempted to simplify the process where single-family or duplex residential infill development met certain criteria, and also looked at the costs involved in having to do that. As you're all aware, we do face, when we have these new forms of development in infill situations, we do face potential flooding of existing older houses in those neighborhoods. And this ordinance is an attempt to alleviate those things before they start and prevent neighbor complaints. One of the issues that we heard about was the cost of providing certain things and having documents reviewed. I've spoken with the city's building official, and the cost of reviewing engineering plans or grading plans in the city will be met by the permit fees. And so that would be no cost to any applicant that came in and had to meet these criteria. Criteria have been simplified. Looking at the amount of filling brought into lots to be minimum. Looking at stem wall or other forms of foundations, and that would be approved during the building permit process. The owner and developers are also asked to demonstrate that the development would not increase off-site flooding, specifically to properties adjacent to where they're going to be building. And on waterfronts, to look at a buffered shoreline solution if we do have infill lots in those locations. So a fairly simple change to the ordinance, but one that we hope will alleviate some of the consequences of infill development when we're dealing with older neighborhoods. So based on that, staff were recommending that we move forward and adopt this on second hearing.
Okay, thank you. Is the board satisfied with the change that was explained? And does anybody else have any questions?
Madam Mayor, I'll move approval for discussion. I do have a few questions.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion, Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Freeman, just to clarify on, I appreciate staff's edits to address our comments from the last to the first reading. Just to be clear, you said that the review by city's consultant, our consultant of record right now is Kimley Horn would be for engineering?
We have
or
a number of consultants
a few.
available for review.
And this won't be at any additional cost to the taxpayers? It's
Correct.
all covered by the building fee permit process?
If review is required, we do review in-house as well with Public Works.
Okay.
If they feel an external review is required, then we would send out to external consultant, and that would be a no cost to the applicant at that point.
And no additional cost to us, really? I mean, you say that it's covered by the
Yeah.
building permit fee? Okay. And have we reached out to our consultant engineers just to?
I got some preliminary cost numbers, and they seem
Okay.
to be in the range that we're
Insignificant.
hoping, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions for staff or any questions by the board on this commission item? Okay, hearing no questions. Are there any questions by the public on item number 8, amendment to the land development regulations, residential infill stormwater management? No cards have been received and there are no questions.
Madam Mayor, can I ask one more? I beg your
Yes,
pardon.
yes, sir.
Thank you. I know this is limited to, the PUD process would have its own rules. This is, I think, appropriately tailored to small, single-family duplex residential, small builders to help address the costs associated with this. How about commercial? Is that already completely covered, a small, single commercial building that were to go up? Are we appropriately addressing that?
This just deals with residential. If
Okay.
you want staff to examine the process for commercial build, then we could do that. What we normally see in the city is fairly complex commercial build with engineered
Right.
site plans, and those are reviewed during the site plan review process. So normally the city would be requesting quite significant stormwater analysis to be done
Right.
at that stage. So we, as part of a building permit, it's more comprehensively
And
comprehensively
commercial
dealt
has a regulation to maintain its stormwater on site, so even in straight zoning, the commercial's coming in with a stormwater plan.
Yeah.
Whereas a residential home doesn't generally have a stormwater plan until this ordinance.
But if it's a light commercial use within a mixed-use district, you know, the zoning that would include, let's say, like R3, where you could have some light limited commercial, I just want to make sure, you know, if
We should, I think I get what you're saying. I think in terms of we're moving towards a more mixed use, use of commercial areas.
which I hope we are.
We are, hopefully with smaller units, and using that sort of transition to that size of units, then I think we should look at how we address those.
I guess that's my suggestion. Maybe we should look at addressing any small commercial development as well.
Yeah,
That's it. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. I did not hear any comment from the public when I asked for comments, and so we have discussion and deliberation on item number 8. If there are no further comments, I'll call for a vote. And this says roll call.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Item number 9 for second reading, the Tobacco and Electronic Nicotine Regulation Ordinance number 2459-2021. City Attorney.
This is ordinance number 2459-2021, an ordinance of the City of Stuart amending Article 7, Sections 12-163 through 12-172, relating to the sale and use of nicotine delivery devices and tobacco products, providing for a severability clause, a conflicts clause, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes. This is obviously second reading. On first reading, I had provided the board with the redlined version. I simply had adopted the county ordinance and applied it to a tobacco ordinance that we actually already had in place. So some of it was duplicative and et cetera, but after first reading, when there was no objections, I had Ryan go ahead and adopt all of the changes that had been set forth in the red line, and that's why you don't have a red line version in this attachment of the ordinance. I did not know that today our phones would blow up and emails would flutter, or I would have gladly provided you with the red line version. I should also mention that as recently as 6:35 this evening, I received an email from Kim Nash at quitdoc.com, and she said, "I'd delay your vote to come up with a plan for licensing, but it could be as simple as a box they check on the occupational license." I emailed her back and asked her if she wanted me to ask you for a continuance, and unfortunately she hasn't responded yet. I just thought I would mention that to you. As it relates to a box you check on the occupational license, according to Jolie in Finance, it's not that easy. First of all, it's a business tax receipt. They've changed the language on it. Secondly, it's regulated by the state, and we can't add vape stores. So like, for
And-
example,
Mike, could you tell us what, I know you guys have had some conversations with Taryn over at the county regarding how they're going to do it. They're creating a whole new licensing.
but I haven't, David. I think
So-
Oh, I'm sorry. I
So
thought
first, I want to make it clear that this is not the identical ordinance that the county put forward.
Right.
There was some confusion about that. Most of it is centric to theirs, except for the licensing component that we had removed. Part of it is around the fact that the business tax receipt that we currently collect is not necessarily a license that you can have those restrictions of removing someone's ability or removing their license for a violation of sorts. In their ordinance, they have both the suspension of the license as well as a fine in theirs. I know I've spoke about maybe having a fine directly in ours rather than a license per se. We would have, if we went down the licensing route, it couldn't go as a box, as Ms. Nash was proposing. We'd have to come up with a new licensing product or format to track those licenses and so forth, just for this particular one. And then if they violated it, I guess they could still sell their other wares. They just wouldn't be able to sell what they got that license for the vape or the tobacco product.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So I spent quite a bit of time talking with several people today, including Ms. Nash, her supervisor, Dr. Barry Hummel, and Stacy Hetherington, County Commissioner Hetherington. And there is very much a desire by them for us to have a licensing component, but as I've been really digging into the licensing component, it's not practical. But I think there's a way, the goal for them with the licensing is to achieve compliance. And I think rather, since the licensing is so difficult, I think we can achieve that compliance with very stiff penalties. Now, we do have a penalty in here, it's $500 penalty, but I think that we could create first offense penalty, and I'm going to say $250, $500, $1,000 each one after that. Plus, Mike said there was an appearance fee of $350, Mike?
300.
300?
So if they get violated, they have to go to the magistrate. Even the first offense, like you mentioned, if it was 250, would actually be 550 because it's 250 plus costs of 300.
And you take some of these small retailers, the ones that are more likely to be the ones out of compliance, they're not, or even a large retailer such as a chain gas station or something like that, they're not going to tolerate having to pay fines because of employees. And so I think for now, maybe there's a way in the future we can do some sort of licensing, but I think there's one is we want to get it so that it's against the law for under 21. So I think we should approve the ordinance as is with the addition of a code enforcement fine through the magistrate of $250 for the first offense, $500 for the second, $1,000 for each additional offense, plus the appearance fees, and that we we strictly enforce those penalties when people get caught breaking the law. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that before I make a motion or one of us makes a motion on that. So
Before you go on to something, I just was reading here the penalty section in section A where it talks about the $500 fine. We need to remove that second part of that where it talks about imprisonment.
Believe it or not, I left that in. That was actually in our code of ordinances from our prior tobacco code. I don't know where the imprisonment came from and how we would do it, but because it was there, I hadn't been
I
directed
didn't think
to
that we
change
could
it.
do
I
that,
thought,
to be
well,
honest, but
probably
All-
won't enforce that part, but it's there.
All city ordinance violations can go either way, but once you add that language to the 60 days imprisonment, you have to go to county court. You can't go before a magistrate.
Which is fine, which is
And it's
the
a-
board.
All right.
It's a code enforcement issue in front of the magistrate, is that correct?
Well, I'd like to point out, Madam Mayor and colleagues, that I think this confusion arose today because of, the way the county would handle something like this is that their code enforcement versus ours. Ours is under the police department, and, our code enforcement has quite a bit of teeth. Now I'm just hearing that we've got the language in there that we could imprison them for these
Our code
violations.
enforcement can't do that.
I know, and I believe that should be taken out, but I interpret this as written is staff's recommendation for the best route to proceed forward with our desired outcome, which is to be in agreement with the federal law and prohibit sales of tobacco products to those under 21. And, hypothetically, if we still have major problems with this a month from now, we meet twice a month, we can come up here and adjust the ordinance and change it if we like. We have that ability. But
you're right.
I have faith in our code enforcement to do that. The real hesitation, as it's been recommended by our staff, is when we start adding a licensing requirement to them. City of Stuart is full of schools, and this would have major, significant negative impacts on businesses that are near schools that, may want to be established or are already established. And, I think we should take our staff's recommendation on how to proceed with this, and I'm confident, especially with the modifications Commissioner McDonald suggested, that this ordinance will have teeth. And if it doesn't, I'm open to revisiting it.
If I can chime in too, by doing it through code enforcement, we are not fining the bad operator. We are going to be fining the landlord. And the landlord's going to have to take the brunt of it, and they will evict the bad operator if they start getting $1,000 fines because some guy's making $3 off a pack of cigarettes. In addition to that, under the licensing, I wasn't sure what the county was going to do, but let's assume for the sake of conversation, there's a business on East Ocean Boulevard that's a convenience store, and it's owned by an individual, but it's rented out to, convenience store. And convenience store sells cigarettes 3 times and loses the license. Landlord evicts the convenience store. Does that mean from that point forward, that store can no longer be a convenience store because the county has now revoked its license? And the landlord then gets the brunt of that, even though the landlord wasn't the operator. Or in the alternative, if it's not the landlord that gets the brunt of it and it's the operator, and ABC Sales, Inc. gets the license revoking, instead they change it to CDE, Inc., and reissue the license for $10 because under the county ordinance, it says it doesn't apply to anybody that was previously selling tobacco products. And then they're back in business. So the license just seemed really complicated. What we wanted to do is have the teeth to go in and find somebody, bring them in front of the magistrate and call it out if there's a problem. We also have no reason to believe that our local stores aren't going to follow the ordinance anyway. And as Commissioner Matheson or Vice Mayor Matheson pointed out, if they do, we can bring it back to you and revisit.
Okay.
Madam
So,
Mayor?
Mr. McDonald, Commissioner McDonald, is Miss Washer, Nash, I forgot what her new name is, but is she asking us to table this until she can present with us or until she can have
I
time to
believe she's
review
on
it?
Zoom, and
Could you check, Paul, could you check if Kim Washer Nash?
You have both Kim Nash and Stacy Hetherington. They also have their hand raised, I assume.
Okay, so we're still with the board discussion. We'll ask for them. You had something else? You just wanted to make
No,
sure
no,
that I
that's-
included them?
So I just wanted to make sure they were included, but I think that the way that I want to proceed is to, A, get the law passed so that, the ordinance passed so that we're banning anyone under 21. B, making the fines very stiff. And C, avoiding the conundrum of the licensing issue that staff has said that it isn't going to just work as easy as a checkbox. And I think I absolutely agree with Commissioner or Vice Mayor Matheson that we can, we operate pretty swiftly. We just brought this up. I brought it up in November, and here it is in January, and we're on second reading. So we can come back much swifter than a county or a state can. So we can come back and revisit this if we can figure out how to do some sort of licensing if we feel that's necessary. But in the meantime, I want to stop minors or people under 21 from buying cigarettes and tobacco products. And this way, at least effectively, we can have that portion moving on while we try to explore some other options,
Okay, thank you.
if needed.
Any other commissioner comment on this ordinance and the changes? Madam Clerk and the city attorney, I have a question. I probably should know the answer to this. But when we have the comments by Zoom, and especially when it's pertinent and something needs to be probably put in writing or so, do we take full information from them, name, address, phone number, or do you just use the Zoom information when you're doing your minutes? How do we, since we don't have them handed in cards, how do we do that, city attorney?
There is no legal requirement that someone fill out a card.
Okay.
We're simply identifying who they are for the record so that if someone wanted to review it later. Technically, if somebody came in and we asked them to fill out a card and they said no, we must allow them to speak. So by
Okay.
doing it on Zoom, It's simply we document it when they say their name.
Okay, all right, and you're satisfied with that?
And we do usually have their name that comes up on the screen, or a screen name or
Or they
something,
announce
so-
it before they talk.
Right.
Okay, that's fine, I just wanted to be sure. So we have members of the public, and are there hands raised on Zoom, Mr. Paul?
Yes, ma'am. Both Kim Nash and Stacy Hetherington.
Well, first I'd like to welcome the chairperson of the Martin County Board of County Commissioners to our meeting tonight, Commissioner Hetherington. Thank you for coming to our meeting and participating with us. Would you like to make a comment on this resolution?
Good evening, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening and happy birthday, Commissioner Matheson.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm Stacy Hetherington. I'm Chair of the Martin County Board of County Commissioners. And I just want to take a minute to thank you, number one, for bringing this ordinance up and for your commitment to our youth when considering it. One of the public health crises that I've always felt prior to COVID was the alarming rate of youth addiction to nicotine, which of course has increased with the advent of vaping products. Statistics showed that the rate of Martin County teens vaping surpassed Palm Beach and St. Lucie counties, which I was surprised to hear. 1 in 5 high schoolers are using electronic devices, and 1 in 20 middle schoolers are using these electronic devices. So as a parent and as an advocate for our youth and as a community leader, that to me was a prompt for local action. And after a year, prior to COVID, meeting with stakeholder groups, Martin County, I was proud that we unanimously passed in November which I think is a monumental ordinance that follows federal law by raising the age of sale for tobacco products to 21. It also added a distribution license at the county level, which would allow our law enforcement to ensure stores are not selling to minors. I think Commissioner Meyer, when you said earlier, you mentioned, that laws are only as effective as they are, enforced, when referring to single-use plastics. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think even Attorney Martell, the key is enforcement and compliance. And I think that we have the same goal in mind, and we're trying to reach that compliance. So again, thank you for bringing this up and considering it. I just ask that you consider how you're going to enforce it and putting some teeth in it so there are consequences. And again, I thank you. And I believe that one of our legal, our county attorney staff members, Elise Elder, is on Zoom as well, should you have any technical questions. But again, I appreciate all of you considering this because I think it shows that, our commitment to our youth. Thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Hetherington. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Any commissioners have anything to say after Commissioner Hetherington's comments?
Madam Mayor, yes, please, if I may. I spoke with Chair Hetherington last year about this, and I'm glad she just spoke about it. Again, I think we all have the same goal. We want to achieve compliance, and I think, not to belabor the point too much, the idea of a licensing component makes sense. However, in our current system, our licensing is not the same as licensing in other governments. And so I think it's worth us looking at how we can achieve that, perhaps in the future. But at this point, I agree. I think we need to move forward. I'm not sure I'm convinced yet that we should knock down the fee for violation from $500 to an escalating. I could be convinced, I suppose. I think $500 is solid. I think that's got good teeth in it. But yeah, I think I'm ready to move forward with this with the appropriate revision to remove imprisonment if that makes it legally precarious, and I'll follow the advice of our city attorney and city manager on that. But yes, I think the licensing component makes sense, but when you actually look at how our city operates with our business tax license, that's not exactly the function of a licensing component. So anyway, thanks again, Chair Hetherington.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Just to address Commissioner Meyer, the reason why I just was thinking of the escalation and starting at $250 is because of the $300 appearance fee that actually puts it at $550 to start. And I don't want it to be, I want it to be a first offense, to be a teaching moment, not a punitive moment. And then I want it to become punitive if it continues. So that's what because if you take a small independent convenience store, a $500 hit over a $3 or $5 pack of cigarettes is a big hit. So, and if that doesn't teach them, then the 750 plus the 300 should, and if that still doesn't teach them, hopefully a $1,300 total fine would. So that's my rethinking
Sure.
on it. Just wanted to explain that. So.
Thank you. And due to the nature of this resolution, normally we have our public just give comments and we don't make any comments in between, but because of the nature of this thing, wanted to make sure that we have it resolved, and because this is something that came from the county and we're trying to adopt in line with the county while making our own changes, I'm glad that we can have the time to discuss this. Mr. Paul, is there any, I know you have a last name. Are there any other hands raised on Zoom? Would you please call out who you'd like to select?
Yes, the next person would be Kim Nash.
Okay, Ms. Nash? If you would say your name and introduce yourself and your wonderful organization and Dr. Hummel and all the things that Quit Docs does.
Thank you. I'll be brief since I have 3 minutes and I have so much to say, but this is Kim Nash. I'm with the Quit Doc Foundation. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for considering this. It's a really big deal. I did want to clarify a few things that I think might have been a little bit misconstrued of what I was talking about with everyone earlier today. One is this is a monumental thing that the county did. They're one of the leaders in the state on passing this. Alachua County was the first that did something last year. The reason, primarily for the tobacco retail licensing component, is because the state compliance checks are few and far between. We have over 200 retailers in Martin County, and on average in a year, maybe 20 to 30 of them get checked. When they do get checked, the violations are very minute. We know that 75% of our youth are accessing tobacco products at the point of sale. This is where they're getting their hands on nicotine and where they're starting use, and it's leading to a lifetime of addiction. That's the issue that we're trying to circumvent here. One of the reasons that the tobacco retail license part of it is so important is because that license allows you the ability to revoke their ability to sell tobacco products. I know that the fee sounds great. Imprisonment, that sounds good too. But in reality, a $500 fee, an $800 fee, a $1,000 fee really doesn't mean much to a business that's making millions of dollars locally, billions of dollars nationally, selling these products to youth. So you may give them a fine. Chances are, research shows that's not really going to be much of a deterrent for them. They make that in an afternoon. So what we're looking at is the ability to have a structure. What the county did is they put a structure in place where you violate once, you get a fee, you violate twice, you get a fee. The fee goes up, but the fourth time that you violate this law, you're going to lose your license. There's also licensure suspensions that are worked into that process, but that means that they are losing an income stream. I know that there are loopholes. Maybe they re-register their business under another name. But at the end of the day, they're facing a real consequence. It's the one thing that's going to keep them from selling to youth. The other big aspect of this is that stores that only sell e-cigarette or nicotine products currently have no licensure requirement at the state level. So whereas your CVS, sorry, not CVS, Walgreens, or your gas station have a state license, there's zero record, zero compliance, zero checks for a store that's only selling e-cigarette products because of a loophole that they are not covered under the definition of tobacco at the state. So requiring a license locally would be their first license, their first compliance check, and the first thing to keep kids from getting e-cigarettes at vape-only shops. We know that that's the real issue. Kids really aren't starting by smoking cigarettes. They're starting by using e-cigarettes. There are stores in the city of Stuart that are of concern. I want to address the school piece because there is language in the county ordinance that...
Ms. Washernash,
Yes.
I know that what you're saying is important. We have a time limit, but I'm going to allow you to continue. Go on.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll be very brief. The school piece, there is research that having stores within schools are one of the main reasons they get it. If you want to take that piece out, I think that that's an easy way to get around that, preventing new stores from opening up near schools. In the end, the effective part of this is having a retail license requirement on that store in the first place so that they know that you're coming to check them and they know that there's a real consequence if they're selling to youth. The other aspect is that without that in this ordinance, there's no framework for who is performing the checks or how often they're being performed. They're being performed by the sheriffs at the county level. And they say frequent. The idea is to check each store once a year, twice ideally. Last point I want to make just real quickly for consideration is Alachua County, they did, and I can share this article, but basically every city in Alachua County gave over their right to do the license and the checks to the county so that they didn't have to deal with the paperwork in the licensing because a lot of them weren't set up to do that, which I understand has been like kind of one of the pieces at the city level. I just want to express that I think this requires maybe a little bit more conversation, a little bit more thought to see, are we just passing something to pass it, or are we passing something to affect real change for our youth?
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm out of breath.
Yes, thank you. And while you're out of breath, are you stopping or did you have something else to say?
No, I'm good. Sorry.
you.
I tried to get that out real fast for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I understand the constraints that you're under. Thank you so much. Mr. Paul, is there anyone else? Does the county attorney have something to say?
Yes, we do have Elise Elder as well.
Okay. County attorney? Can the county attorney hear us? Ms. Elder? Elise?
Yes, can you hear me?
No, we did
Hello?
not hear you, so please introduce yourself and give us your comments on this resolution regarding the tobacco ordinance.
Yes, my name is Elise Elder. I'm one of the attorneys in the Martin County Attorney's Office. I'm the attorney that basically worked on the tobacco ordinance and from start to finish. So I wanted to offer my assistance as you explore the licensing option to any of your staff to, discuss the different options and why the county chose to take different provisions in and put different provisions out. Martin County has a business tax receipt similar to the city of Stuart, and we were able to streamline our tobacco distribution license so it coincides with our business tax receipt, but it's separate. So I just want to offer my assistance to, as you pursue the licensing requirement, to answer any questions and, just talk about why we chose the options that we chose as the county moving forward.
Okay, thank you so much for your comment.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I do have a question.
We have
for
a
Ms. Elder.
question for you, Ms. Elder.
Okay.
Hi, Ms. Elder. This is Vice Mayor Matheson. Has the county taken any disciplinary action so far? Have they removed any businesses in the county's license to this point?
No, well, actually, the ordinance does not become effective until February 1st. So we are going to start issuing our licenses on February 1st. And So from that point, the sheriff will enforce it. And we have kind of a step suspension penalty scheme where like your first offense, maybe there's a written warning, but your first offense is a $500 fine and a 7-day suspension of your ability to sell tobacco products. And it goes all the way down to after your fourth offense, it's a permanent revocation of your license. But we have not issued any licenses yet, but we anticipate those will start on February 1st. Our tax collector is going to issue them for us. So, and she is ready to go.
Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I had a question for the county attorney.
Hold on, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, I appreciate it. Mr. Matheson, did you finish?
I'm still looking, I guess, for a little clarification. So the sheriff will, this ordinance will go into effect February 1st.
That's Monday.
Correct.
The sheriff will then begin doing, I guess, random checks of compliance.
Correct.
I guess it would be helpful for us to know, because I am interested in passing this tonight, and so we at least take a step in the right direction. But maybe in a few months from now, I mean, one of the ways we're going to know if our enforcement mechanism with our code enforcement and fining is working, or there's a dramatic difference, if 2 months from now the county has ended up revoking 10 business licenses, that would certainly be beneficial for the city to know, and we could take more corrective action on that. So I guess if you know, Chair Hetherington or you could let the city know where the county stands in a few months from now as far as corrective action. That way we can get a better scope on the problem. But sitting here, I do see somewhat of a sense of urgency to enact something now, which is what we're doing.
The question I had is
Thank you.
the license. So the license doesn't regulate 18 to 21. It regulates the sale of tobacco products. So on Tuesday, every racetrack, every Publix, and every business in Martin County that sells a cigarette or a vape is going to be their first violation, because they haven't issued any licenses yet. So 100% of businesses selling tobacco in Martin County on Tuesday will be in violation, unless the tax collector issues 200 licenses on Monday. So I don't know how, they're not going to go in and check and see if a 19-year-old's buying cigarettes.
Right.
If that Publix sells cigarettes on Tuesday to anyone, it will be violating the county ordinance.
Okay.
County attorney?
Our growth management department is issuing, they're called acknowledgement for the different tobacco retailers in Martin County. Letters have gone out, and I think it's just as easy as them going online to obtain their license from the tax collector. There's going to be a rollout period, so tobacco retail licenses or distribution licenses will start rolling out February 1st. Obviously, not everybody will have one. There'll be like a little time period where retailers will have to obtain them, but letters are going to every tobacco, or they might have already gone last Friday, to every tobacco retailer in Martin County, letting them know that they have to get a tobacco distribution license and they need to do it on February 1st. So that's kind of the process that we're going through right now. Obviously, it'll roll out. I'm sure that the sheriff's office will take that in consideration. But if anybody in the state of Florida can't sell tobacco products to anyone under the age of 21, regardless, because of the federal law. But the licensing component will start on February 1st, and we're confident that our tobacco retailers will take the appropriate action.
Thank you for your comment. Commissioner Vice Mayor Matheson?
Thank you. I appreciate the insight.
Yes, Mr. Campani, would you please come forward?
I don't think I would ever have said this before, but if I were Mr. Mortel, I'd be very upset at this commission. If he went to the county commission and started commenting on ordinances that they were going to pass, that would be a gross misjudgment. And I think if you want to have a meeting with the county attorney, that's great, but that was public comment. That was not public comment. So I just find that completely inappropriate, that whole bunch of speaking. And as far as the ordinance is concerned, I agree with Commissioner McDonald. Get it on your books, get going, and if you see there's a problem, it can be adjusted within the matter of a month.
Okay,
So that would be my comment.
thank you. And that was going to be my comment too, to our city attorney with regard to section 12-1.70, section A, with regard to the penalties, and to Commissioner McDonald. Are we adding or changing anything other than the changes that have been made in this particular version, especially in light of any comments? What is your,
I'll make a motion now.
yes,
if you
sir,
like.
okay then.
So I'll go ahead and move to approval with change to the penalty section, to remove the 60 days imprisonment, because I don't think we can have that anyways, to have a escalating fine starting at $250, first offense, second offense of $500, third offense of $1,000.
Okay.
And of course, that will not include the appearance
Appearance
fee,
fees,
which
okay.
I don't think it actually has to be in the ordinance, but if Mike, you think it needs to be in the ordinance, we can put it in.
When I revise it, I'll make a mandatory appearance for first offense, and then in our Schedule A, it has it in it already, so you're covered.
Okay. And so, and then, as far as an effective date, effective date? is-
February 1st. You can make
February
it
1st?
tomorrow. The ordinance says effective upon adoption.
Okay, perfect. I'm good with that.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on the motion made by Commissioner McDonald and seconded by Vice Mayor Matheson?
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir, question.
What is our plan for communicating to our local businesses? I mean, are we going to be mailing or dropping off a copy of this?
First of all, as Elise did point out, the federal law is already 21, so most of them are aware that there's a conflict in the law or whatever. Number two, our ordinance doesn't require a license, and it doesn't require the prohibition of sale of cigarettes. It prohibits selling them to people under 21. It's my understanding that I guess the schools and other people get information on different stores that may or may not be, liberal with this. And I've reached out to Kim Nash and said, listen, tell me the stores in Stuart, and we'll send people out tomorrow to start telling them we're going to be watching them. The other thing that the ordinance does is it prohibits you from having self-service displays for vapes or cigarettes. So we'll probably send code enforcement out, and if somebody has the vapes on the counter, the first one will be those have to be put away, and then we'll go back and they can be violated.
So we're going to have code enforcement staff go out. If, let's say, our effective date is the 1st, code enforcement staff is going to go out to each business.
It's already started.
It's already started.
Yep.
They've already been going out.
Yep.
Okay. So our plan is to just continue going out and speaking with the local businesses? I mean, I'm just wondering how this is actually going to be implemented. Are we going to alert them to this new ordinance?
So that's what code enforcement is doing. They've gone around to the locations that sell vapes and cigarettes or tobacco products to inform them of this new ordinance. And
Okay.
so the primary issues with this is the sale, the age of the sale, and then the other is the self-service merchandising prohibited. So like a lot of vapes will have vape pens and stuff on the counter or whatever, and now they have to be behind the counter or whatever it is. So we're not doing license inspections. We're doing inspections to determine that there's nothing that's self-service. And then to catch someone who's selling to someone who's below the age of 21, that's probably going to be like an undercover type op.
And that would go with a license or without. That really
Right.
doesn't have any relationship to it.
Mayor McDonald, Commissioner McDonald and Attorney Mortel, Section 12-1.67, as city managers pointed out about the self-service merchandising prohibited. In Section B of that area, with regard to the penalties. Would the penalties would be the same as outlined by Commissioner McDonald for the general ordinance? Would the same language be put in there too, Attorney Mortel?
That's obviously the pleasure of the board. In this particular situation, the sale was a one-time event, so that was first, second, third violation. In this particular B, it says, if code enforcement goes in and sees vapes on the counter on Tuesday, and they go back in on Friday and they're still on the counter, it could be 500 Tuesday, 500 Wednesday, 500 Thursday, and 500 Friday, because they're still in violation. But it's the pleasure of the board. That's whatever you guys think is most appropriate.
What would you recommend, Mike?
You know, I don't know if people are not going to comply. I have a feeling that most of our vendors try to comply, so I think they're going to do it. But it may be easier to have it consistent, but I don't like the idea that once I pay the $250, I can leave the vapes out on the counter for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's what I think that, I like the per day violation
day.
for the display.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up, and
Yeah,
especially.
good, thank you very much, good point.
Are there any other comments on the motion as made and detailed by Commissioner McDonald and seconded by Vice Mayor Matheson? And have we had sufficient public comment? Question? Want to call for question? Okay, that's it. We'll just vote now then.
Okay.
Clerk?
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Thank you so much for the discussion, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Kempany. So we had one additional item also. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm running off. So we had two additional items
Plastics
for
discussion or
discussion
green
and
market?
deliberation.
Plastics discussion or green market, what's their pleasure?
Yes, the license agreement for the green market and then the single-use plastic. I guess since Commissioner Bruner brought up the license agreement first, we will have that as the first item for discussion and deliberation. And I'm going to defer to the city attorney as Commissioner Bruner presents her reasons, and then we'll let the city attorney lead the discussion.
Well, I didn't want to take up all your time. I just wanted you all to have a copy of the lease market and, the green market lease, and we could come back in 2 weeks and discuss it more, or whatever happens tonight. But in 6 months, their lease will be up, and we have to give them 60 days. And my concern is, and it's been for the last 6 months or 5 months, is they've only been paying $2,000 a year, and it's been many years. I don't know how long they've been there, 20 years or more, but it's always very, very busy. I was there Sunday. It was so nice. It was just beautiful. All the tenants on the each side of the sidewalk, and there had to have been, I tried to count them all. I think I counted 40 tents. And they sell a little bit of everything. And I want you all to just think about it. And if he wants to take it upon himself, whatever we come up with, fine. Or we can just send it out for a proposal.
Commissioner
So
Bruner?
are you asking for that the city consider increasing the lease amount to the green market when we
If I could-
renew it with them?
First of all, the lease does not expire until July 1st.
Yes, sir.
So
Doesn't
we're under
expire at all.
contractual obligation. It has an auto renewal, but we can notify it every annual July.
I wanted to
So-
bring it up now so we could, start thinking about it and what we want to do instead of just saying, check it off, 2,000, and there you go. It's quite a lot of money being made, and if it was mine, I would. Well, I was thinking, if I would like to do it. I'd be happy to do something like this. So I just have a big concern with the the leasing now.
We appreciate your concern, and it's been brought up, so maybe
There's
city
also-
manager and city attorney can take it under advisement.
There's also one exception to the lease expiring on July 1st, and that's subparagraph I, says the city of Stuart's in the process of becoming a zero plastic waste city as directed by the city commission. It will be the responsibility of Stuart Green Market to ensure its vendors comply with and conform to any such policy once adopted by the city commission. Any violation of this policy after its effect will be considered a material breach of this agreement. Licensee shall be subject to any penalties as set forth in the policy. Further, failure to comply with same shall be grounds for termination of this agreement.
I have a
I
question.
mention that because I know that that's the next subject.
I have a question, because I know
Yes, Commissioner McDonald.
I know there was a problem about this a couple of years ago, but when Bernie, after Bernie passed away, the section on the not-for-profit and the 990s, has that all been resolved? Let me just find it here.
I think I misunderstood you, Mr. Mortel. What was it that you said?
Hold on, Ms. Bruner.
Right off. I'm
The lease,
confused.
the lease started on July 1st and has a 60-day termination notice for no reason. But if it's for cause, there is a clause in the lease that says that they're supposed to be plastic-free or certain plastic-free, and failure to abide by that policy is grounds for the commission to terminate the lease at
Right.
any time. The only reason I mentioned it is because during the initial commissioner comments, it was brought up, and I just knew that that was going to be the next subject of discussion.
And I'm
Thank you.
questioning
Yes,
about
Commissioner?
Item A, Section A, which is the furnish the city copy of its financial report, including the 990 forms. Have we been getting all of that?
No,
Yes,
nothing.
yes, they've done their 990 card. So the 990 card means that they make under a certain amount of money. So you don't really get to see where they're contributing their money to when they do a 990 card.
Yeah.
So a 990 card means they gross under $50,000 a year.
Well, in the, it says it must finance a copy of its annual financial report, including 990 forms. So what about have we ever gotten a financial report?
I don't know.
No, I think he's
Well,
been asked over and over, but he
well-
just seems to can't
Well,
present
Jim
it.
is coming up. I just want to state something as far as where we were headed with the path with the Green Market.
Yes, sir.
So the Green Market, we were preparing to bring you a lease amendment back, or a license agreement amendment back to put them in Flagler Park permanently. When we were in the process of doing that and making sure all the documents and everything were up to par and everything to bring you that license agreement, the management of the Green Market decided they wanted to be back in their original location over here. So at that time, we decided, well, if he's coming back over here, we don't necessarily have to change the license agreement at this particular time, because this license agreement contemplates them being here already. I asked them to stay down there until the vaccinations were a little more readily available before coming back down to this side lot. But it is their intention to come back to this side lot eventually.
David, all that I saw Sunday, the last several Sundays, 40 tents, there's no way they can all fit up here. It is really growing and booming. Now, I don't know what the summertime will do, but there's no way he could fit all those tents, what I saw Sunday. But maybe I don't know.
So,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Who's next? Vice Mayor?
sure.
I believe Jim was going to answer the question about
yes.
paperwork.
Jim
Okay.
Korolski, Community Services Director, for the record.
Yes, sir.
In response to your question, Commissioner McDonald,
Thanks, Jim.
yes, you're welcome. Yes, they in fact have their 990 on schedule. However, I have sent several emails reminding them of the responsibility of transparency about providing us with reports on any of their income and expenditures. I have not received anything. They're claiming pretty much that it's going to be within the 990 reporting situation. And as of about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when we were planning on having them move to the annex location, I mentioned it to Kevin again, and I said, listen, you guys really do need to be able to provide for us. You need to be transparent about how all this money is coming up. He does a good talk, and he pretty much, says, yeah, we'll get it, and I never do. So, I'm done everything that I know how to do, including sending an email directly to his entire board, and that was the response that came back.
Thank you. I know that Commissioner Matheson is on deck, but while you're up there, Mr. Krolski and the city attorney, I just wanted to ask for sure. It seems obvious, but I'll ask anyway. Stuart Green Market, Inc., that's their only business, and that's their only thing that they're doing is the green market at the city of Stuart, so that when they make an annual report or a financial report, we're not asking them for some other additional things with other businesses or other things that they're doing. That's their only thing that they do. That's why they're in business, just to do this green market at the city of Stuart property. Is
I
that
have
correct?
no idea.
Because I know that when we had the lyric before, there was a problem with, giving all of the information.
The
and-
reason, the lyrics problem is they didn't want to disclose the amount of money they were paying to their acts. And by accepting benefits from the city, they just didn't want to be confused. In this particular circumstance, it's, I'm not on their board. I've never been to one of their board meetings. I have no idea. I assume that they weren't a 501c3. I think it's a 501c4, so they're more like a club than they are a non-for-profit charitable giving community. I don't know that they've ever gave anything to anybody.
So, Mr. Krolski, I think you have some communication work to do and to get back with us.
What is it-
Ms.
what is it-
Bruner,
what is
you
this-
brought this up. Is there anything else?
I think the vice mayor did it.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the vice mayor. And Mr. Krolski was saying something also?
I just
No.
wanted to be clear as to your desire and directive.
Well, for me, I think if we can come back after they've read this or have given it some thought, that his rental should go up. And if he doesn't agree to that, then I think we could easily get somebody who would.
And I just wanted to make sure it's in compliance with the full document.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes, so if we can get that from, I think that we should at least get some paperwork, Mr. Krolski, Mr. City Attorney, and also our Finance Director, if we could see, make sure that we have all those things have been provided to us. Vice Mayor?
So, I think the green market has enormous potential. And I have talked to Mr. Osborne over the past year or so. We've played quite a bit of phone tag over the past few months, and part of my concern for spawning those calls, my calls to him, was about the plastic ordinance. And I had, heard that as we're coming up on January 1st of this year, that there wasn't full compliance. The way I'm going to look at this is, one, Stuart's in the driver's seat with this. This is something that's our property. We're requesting him to follow this ordinance. It's in the lease. I also look at it as I see, and up until a phone conversation I had a week or two ago, I thought there was a lot more potential for the benefit of Stuart residents, which is how we're supposed to look at everything, for the green market to be held at Flagler Park. It's a lot more enjoyable. It's a little bit more open. We can seek out with that location COVID safety and maybe more vendors that, aren't your typical cliche flea market vendor that would draw people to charming Stuart's downtown green market. That being said, I had a long conversation with Bill Moore, head of the DBA, and at this time, his preference seemed to be in the entire, speaking on behalf of the business association, was that the green market might better support the businesses being back at its old location. There's this certain synergy where their clients would walk into downtown and downtown's clients would work to the green market. So one, as it pertains to the location, in the long-term after COVID future, I am all in favor of it being pushed to the Flagler Park. I see the potential of what could be there. I think in the near present, within 1 year, we should do whatever we can to help, one, our downtown businesses, and again, always top priority is the quality of City of Stuart residents. I believe if we should negotiate firmly with the lease, and perhaps knowing what other green markets are paying around the state would be helpful for us to know. And I'm firm that it, again, it's the language is into here, it has to be a nonprofit. Perhaps if Mr. Osborne is not fully communicative and transparent with us, though, a nonprofit with a board that we can work with, you know, I'm in favor of organizations like Stuart Main Street and what we did with the Flagler Center, a board of, you know, community members that are volunteering their time, because the end outcome, when we have to look at the Stuart Green Market, is what's best for City of Stuart residents.
What's the reason for it being, is there a reason for it to be a nonprofit organization or whatever?
I guess that was their choice, but nonprofits can make lots of profit.
Well,
They can make money.
I think
But-
the green market's stated vision is to support health food, different kinds of green initiatives, those
Right.
kinds of things, so.
Well, they sell a little bit of everything, and it's really nice, and it was so busy, and there was people everywhere. And I like that because they had more parking where it used to be. People park all in there. So I'm not for moving it, I'm for it to stay right where it's at. And if he can't make something out of it, I think somebody else can.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think the, kind of going back, the history of it is, I think it was actually created by Stuart Main Street as another way to bring people into downtown.
Yes, sir.
And I know I used to, for a long time, I can't remember how long I've been coming downtown to it, and I do think that from a synergy perspective, it is better in the, it's better in the parking lot right here, even though it is constrained. I know there was a time period where they tried moving it to Memorial Park, and that didn't work out. They've had it in Flagler Park, hasn't worked out as well. The business, from what I've heard from the business owners, is they really like the green market and then how it transitions into Rock and Riverwalk on Sunday afterwards. So, but I think that we should probably keep them in the loop as well as we're discussing far as location, because ultimately that's, especially as we're coming through and the businesses that are coming out of COVID, we're going to need to have all the support that they can to help them survive. So
Interestingly, and this was before I got here, but the green market started out in Flagler Park. They didn't get enough business per se. It was moved to Memorial Park before it was renovated. And then when Rock and Riverwalk was growing, it was recruited to come over to the annex as we know it.
yeah, and maybe when their new restaurant's done in Flagler Park, that might change the whole dynamic as well. So
Well, and they're new there on Flagler too. After all these years, it has become a success. And it's not like they're not a success anymore.
Are they currently in compliance with our plastic ordinance on City of Stuart property?
Right now they are,
You let,
because they're not open.
well, I wanted you to be
There's no
aware,
plastic in the
we
park.
have recognized, and I want you to also know that staff is really taking a serious look at this entire thing. That's just a fact.
Thank you.
I have sent our special events permit coordinator on there on a Sunday in order for her to be able to just find out what they're doing. And I told her that this is an opportunity, and I think the way that Commissioner McDonald put it before in the other issue, this is a teaching moment. So there were several vendors that were not in compliance that were educated. In the pamphlets we give out on all of our events, our plastic waste program, and that goes to every special event, every applicant. They all are pointed towards that. I spoke to Kev Freeman regarding that, and, you know, this is controlled pretty much through the license agreement, certainly. However, for code enforcement and things like that on the weekends, on other events, they certainly are going to need to be engaged in some shape or form, because community services is really not, you know, deputized to being able to enforce something like
Yeah.
that, especially as it relates to a special event. And, you know, when you get into the throes of the event and the event is already happening, what are you going to do? Close it down? You know, there's some challenges there.
Yes. So thank you, Mr. Kowalski, Mr. McDonald, Ms. Bruner, and everybody who's given input on this.
Thank you for listening
city-
to me. Thank you.
What was that, Ms. Bruner?
I said, thank you all for listening to me. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you for bringing it up. Did you have a comment still? Okay, because I was gonna ask for some comment, but I was gonna make a comment, but that's okay.
Ellen McBride from Flamingo Avenue. The original Green Market started right out here in the parking lot, and it was jam-packed, and they ran out of it was all baked goods and green goods. And then they moved it to Flagler, and then the old Memorial Park. Now with this new Memorial Park, it would probably work out much better, so I think. But I said it before, it was $38 a Sunday. They're not paying enough rent. And I, as a taxpayer and a citizen here, would like to know what profit is getting the money. And they can't say health food because I'm into health food. I've got a grandson that's on, Gleevlick free or some kind of a free stuff. Thank you. Very expensive. A little thing of macaroni, $5, yeah. It is, a teeny tiny thing of macaroni and cheese, $5. I bought 10 of them, and they're in my freezer. Want to come over and have it? But the merchants, yes, I'm all for the merchants. I have been for years. I'll always stand up here for the merchants. But I'm with Becky, either Flagler Park or Memorial Park. Now, I love Riverwalk. I came the first time. It was great. And it was quite a few people, but we're all trying to keep, maybe not the whole 6 foot, maybe 4 foot. The second Sunday, 3 vendors were in the circle. And boy, then we were kind of getting jammed in. But the third Sunday, they weren't there. But sitting there, the people walking with the popcorn and the bags, where you could tell they were shopping down at Flagler Park. They're walking the Riverwalk, because like we're all in that 4 wall in our house. We want to get out. The people are. You know, we've got to try, but you're right, Becky. We, the taxpayer, deserve more money, or we need to know where the charity is getting the money. Is it going to 10th Street Rec Center for our children? I'll push that. Or, you know what I mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Any other commissioners with any comments on this discussion and deliberation?
Yes, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
As a former vendor at the Green Market for many years, and a farmer, and have experienced many different green market and farmers market organizations around the country. I agree with, it seems like the majority here. I think it should be in the park more permanently. I understand the desire by the local downtown businesses to have that, the market closer by so that it encourages more people to go there, and I'm all for supporting our local businesses, but I don't think at the expense of taking up all of that valuable parking right close by and the traffic jam that is created right there in that tiny little area. The park is a much more appropriate venue. It's gorgeous. It's there. I mean, it reminds me of going to the Fort Pierce Farmers Market on the park near the river. It's, you know, it's just a much better location. It was better as a vendor going there. It wasn't as hot. It was nice in the shade. You know, it was better for the customers. So I'm not really in favor of it moving back closer to downtown to the old location. And, you know, Kevin is a friend of mine. You know, but at the same time, this is our license agreement. It needs to be complied with. If it's not being complied with, I'm sorry. Then, we've got to find somebody else. Having experienced multiple different organizations that have run farmers markets across the country, there are some that are, Grow NYC, the one that does the New York City green markets. I mean, it's a huge organization. And they do a lot of charitable work, a lot of education with the kids. We need the transparency. I agree. It's right here spelled out in our report. We need to know where the money's going. I'm not necessarily convinced that we need to have a much more, that we need to charge a lot more, especially if it's going to be in the park. But if we're not going to charge more, yeah, certainly we need to see where that money's going and how it's being used as a nonprofit organization. And I would be open to negotiating with a private entity that would want to do it for profit. Certainly then, though, we would want to make sure that we're charging something that is more beneficial to the taxpayer. So I guess those are my thoughts. We got to make sure we're in compliance with our single-use plastic ordinance. We got to make sure our financials are in, and if they're not, you have the full force of the commission all saying that, demanding it. I mean, that to me, if we can't get it in the next, by next meeting, I'd be open to laying the hammer down.
Thank you so much for all the comments. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Gallegos?
Hi, Jim Gallegos, Manor Drive. I've been watching the green market for quite a while now, and I've frequented virtually every single Sunday. And some of the things that I've noticed that are a little bit bothersome is that, one, they kind of take the plastics ordinance a little bit lightly. I'll just put it that way. A number of the vendors are not really complying with the plastic ordinance, and to me, that's bothersome. And I think, too, that some of the comments that I've heard that are, I think, valuable is that this is supposed to be a nonprofit. I would think that for the city's sake and for the citizens of our little city, as Commissioner Bruner likes to say, it probably should be a profit-making organization. And in addition to that, one of the things that I've seen, or that I've kind of observed over time, is as I have traveled the local green markets, ours is very small compared to some of the other ones. Take, for example, Fort Pierce. I know that that's one that's quite large. The one in West Palm Beach is large. The one in Palm Beach Gardens, they're all much larger than ours is. And what really comes to mind is they have so many different vendors offering so many different products, and most of it is green. Not all of it is green. There are some things that are sold like wooden things and trinkets of one sort or another, but it has dawned on me quite frequently that our market is so small, and as a result of that, we're probably not getting the business that we could get out of that, and hence the city is really, in effect, taking a loss in my mind. Those are just my observations, but I really think too that we really ought to enforce the plastics ban. That just drives me crazy. So, and I know it's not really taken seriously by some of the vendors.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments by commissioners, staff, or the public?
Madam Mayor, just to reiterate the thing that'll be very helpful to me if we could have staff bring back looking at some other green markets around the state, whether nonprofit or for-profit, and compare them to what we
On their
can
lease
offer.
pricing? Yes. the lease-
Pricing and requirements, exactly.
Okay, so, city manager and city attorney.
I believe I have a handle on direction.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say, my question is, where do we go from here? And based on what Commissioner Bruno has brought up, all the discussion that we've brought up, and I'd say two things. We have like a short-term now thing to deal with the issues that we have and to deal with the time frame when the lease comes up. But we must also think for the future, when City Hall is no longer here, when we've redeveloped the plans for this downtown area, what we're going to look like again when we grow up or when we change. So we need to look carefully and work that in and think about it. I know that it's probably going to be 5 to 10 years in terms of moving, but also look at those things and look at a good place or good location and decide if that's how we'd want things to be. So let's think of that. City attorney, do you need, or city manager, do you need any instructions from us, or is the conversation that we had in this discussion and deliberation sufficient to provide us with,
It's sufficient.
thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, I'm going to give the gavel to Vice Mayor to discuss the single-use plastic materials brought up by Commissioner Meyer, and I'm going to run out for a minute. Thank you, sir.
How's it feel?
It's a prelude.
Begging a
Yes.
few more times.
I thought he was adjourning.
She did give it to him.
I know I could make some happy in the audience if I did that, but Commissioner Meyer, former Mayor Meyer, a quick discussion on, the urgent issue of
Sure, thank you.
plastics.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We started getting into it with the last one, I know, especially with Mr. Krolsky's comments around the Community Services Department and needing a little bit more support. These are the kinds of discussions we need to have. I mean, now that we're finally having, it's out in the real world, the ordinance is out there, we're starting to see how it's working. And so if staff doesn't feel like they're deputized enough to be able to enforce it, that's something we need to take into consideration and we need to address it. My naive view of it is that, it shouldn't be a question of deputizing. It's just plain on the paper, you comply or you don't, and here are the punishments if you don't. For me, though, the concern is, this is a perfect example. We're discussing the green market. We're discussing potentially not using, but we're discussing non-compliance with our plastic ordinance for the green market as constituting material breach of contract, getting out of a contract. And yet, at Guy Davis, just a week or two ago, we had an event that was, city organized and a wonderful community event, and there was a violation of our single-use plastic ordinance there. And so I want us to be clear about we got to apply it equally for everybody, or we need to modify it in such a way where there are carve-outs that we identify as appropriate. I don't think it's fair that, an organization or a user of our public property could potentially be penalized. We could break a contract, even though, totally within our right, but we won't apply it the same way to another organization. So we just need to, it's not a failure, we're learning, but I think we need to address whether or not we can do this, whether or not this is realistic. And I don't want to give up, certainly, but I think we need to, I don't know how we address this. It might constitute us needing to consider maybe dividing our approach into different types of users of our public facilities and perhaps investing some city resources and perhaps acquiring some materials that we can have on hand for certain events that we could either sell or give to organizations to use. That's my opening salvo.
I'll go from there. Very good intro. I like the conversation starter. It's something that's needed to be had, and now it's 2021. Our ordinance is enacted. Any other comments, Mr. McDonald?
So, with the special events, it's a challenge because you have the vendors, which in some cases are coming from different parts of the country and don't know, and of course the organizer may not tell them, and of course they're coming in, they're traveling in, they're showing up on a Friday morning or a Friday afternoon or evening for a Saturday event, and they don't know about that, and all they've got is a giant stack of styrofoam containers, straws, everything that is in violation. So that it's really tough for the, I think, for the vendors. So there's absolutely, we got to get the organizers on board to make sure that they're notifying the vendors in advance so that they can prepare for it. Second thing is, I don't believe there should be any carve-outs. If we're going to have this ordinance, everybody needs to be treated the same. No, it's, oh, well, it's a City of Stuart event, so this organization doesn't have as much money, or this one has trouble organizing, or whatever the reason is. It's not equal, it's not fair, it's not you could probably, from a litigation point of view, probably make an equal protection argument. Then finally, absolutely, I don't think we should spend city resources on helping, so that one group or another can comply, because that, again, we're picking winners and losers. We're saying, oh yeah, well, we're going to help this group, but we're not going to help this group. Well, all the not-for-profits and organizations that put on events, they're all scrambling for resources, and we're going to tell the Arts Council that we're not going to give you any events, but we're going to tell another group, Stuart Main Street, that we are going to give you something. That's not fair. It's not right, and I don't think we should spend taxpayer money on buying compostable straws and food containers for the general public, for one organization and or any organization as far as that goes. So that's just my thought. If we're gonna have this ordinance and we're going to enforce it, it needs to be enforced equitably, equally to everyone.
Thank you, thank you.
Just want to clarify one thing. City of Stuart does not organize the MLK event. It's organized through ACES. We provide a grant for them to do it, but we don't organize the event.
Okay, so now, thank you. Mr. Kralski, when people fill out their application, don't they get a copy of these rules and regulations attached?
Yes, ma'am, they do. And they get an explanation, they get an entire booklet on what it is that they need to be able to comply with. Once the city, and trust me, like there again, we knew this year, starting right up, we're still in January, so it's a good time to have this topic.
Yeah.
Once we get rolling post-COVID, we have 300 events a year between October through Mother's Day. In order for staff to be at every one of these events on every weekend of every week of the year, it does become a scheduling problem. I'm usually floating around somewhere, some way when it comes to these events, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not at them all. So it's a matter of really having eyes on those events with a paper in hand that's going to cite them for whatever it is. I think it's just a matter of like who or what department that falls under.
And we supply the garbage, the recyclable, the red one and the garbage, the green one. And there's like 4 of each there. And when I got a candle, she put it in a bag and then made me a drink. I had the plastic, it was paper. And then I went over to get cheese and he wrapped it in paper. So I was really impressed with it, just looking at them. But everything's there for them, the trash cans to put it in. We do a lot for the people. We really do. Especially that guy, the bathrooms, we clean them up, we take care of everything and put all of those garbage cans out there and make it real easy for him. And electricity.
I unfortunately don't have the ordinance in front of me, but for special events that violate, I thought the penalty was you couldn't have another special event.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
So that
penalty.
brings up a good question. If, for example, Arts Fest, a signature event in downtown Stuart, if they violate it because of a out-of-town vendor, are we going to tell them that they can't have their event the next year?
That's the
That's
hard
what the
part.
code says.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what we've already had, basically, Commissioner Meyer wisely brought up, is MLK Day did not meet our ordinance.
And for what it's worth, the board debated that subject in great detail when we went through the ordinance. It wasn't overlooked. It was discussed and raised as a contemplated issue of what are you going to do if somebody violates. And I actually think the Arts Council was the example.
Yes.
Yeah, they were.
So right now, if we have someone, I mean, I agree with you 100%, Commissioner McDonald, we shouldn't be giving out or devoting taxpayer money to picking favorites of one or the other. I stop at that point, but I also think we've already done this where we should do our best to provide options for potential vendors as to where they can purchase 5,000 to-go clamshells that meet our code. And we may have the ability to research that and find a better deal than others and, you know, could provide that in our literature, but I believe we've already been doing that. But, you know, we need to stand unified and make sure every event is following our ordinance. And that's to-go containers on city permitted property right now is one of the largest violations. And we're all there to see it.
Thank you, and we know that the state has other things with regard to styrofoam that people are sometimes confused. I'm going to say a few words, then I'm going to have, I see that Mr. Hogarth is up front. So, Mr. City Manager, do you think that, and Mr. Krolski, if we either keep putting out notices, maybe on the utility bill 1 month, plus talk to the downtown business people or people who've had previous events at the city, maybe send a email blast or something, or maybe have a Zoom workshop to try to be, pump up our single-use plastic ordinance, let people know that it's there, invite people, invite businesses, invite whoever, just so that it's out there, it's news, it's getting out, which gets me to Mr. Hogarth.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ben Hogarth for the record. To hopefully, just a clarifying point, when we passed and adopted Commission adopted the two ordinances back in 2019, the first ordinance, which we're talking about, has to do with special events on our property. The second, the latter of which is straws, just generally throughout the city, plastic straws. The plastic straw ordinance, the teeth that were put in that provision had to do with a fiscal penalty, a citation, all that. For the special events on our property, the reason all of that wasn't necessarily prioritized is because just like our special events ordinance itself unto itself, the remedy, the classic remedy is if an organization is having a special event that's not authorized or has activities that aren't authorized in that special event application, the event would either A, be completely dispersed, police could disperse the event, or B, we could say shame on you and then not allow them to have events in the city again. In the case of when we discussed, and certainly the city attorney, the city manager remember this, when we discussed the option of our contracts and agreements with our licensees, we put new language. In fact, with the Green Market being one of the most recent, we amended that language for the commission in order to give it teeth where if they in any way continuously had these plastic or these other forms of what I call as contraband now, if they had that in their event, then we had a material breach of the agreement, and that was the intent of putting that new language in there, because if we have our own contracts with them, we can just cancel the contract. That's an easy redress. So we've had different legal redresses for each of these problems that was really identified with the use, with the intended use. So that was the intent moving forward. In this case, we were just talking about the Green Market. It's only successful as long as we are made aware of the issue. But with special events that occur regularly, there should be no excuse for these organizations that are here in the city doing it every week. It's kind of a fool us once, shame on on you, full is twice shame on me. So that's just something to think about moving forward. It's a little bit different with each of the two ordinances, so I hope that brings a little bit more clarification on our thought process, but we
It
certainly
should
talked
also be
about
noted that my recollection, and again, I don't have it in front of me either, was that it also gave us the ability to reduce and/or rescind the security deposit.
Yes, I mean, I do recall that, Mike. And I think really what it's going to come down to is that we can go ahead and permit these events. It still is yet to be seen is that who specifically would be responsible for going out to every event and making sure that they're the plastic police. Now, let's say, for example, that's me, because I don't have enough staff to being able to go ahead and
Congratulations, Jim.
yeah. So I'm using that as an example because somebody has got to do it. And whether or not it be recreation or code enforcement or whomever, that organization has never been identified. So let's say, for example, it is me. I can tell you right now, I don't have 300, I'm not going to be at 300 events. So as it relates to that, you also are going to go through there and say, okay, you're out of compliance. Get ready for the arguments. That wasn't my plastic, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, and then they're going to be coming in here and they're going to be complaining to you guys that, there was a misunderstanding of some sort. So, it's not going to be as clean and easy as just, that's a piece of plastic, you're not going to do your event again. There's going to be drama.
Thank you, Mr. Kralski. So, enforcement, there's no warning option in the current ordinance, Mr. Mortel? For somebody, if the
Well,
plastic
the warning
police?
takes place when you fill out the application for the special event.
Okay,
You walk in and you pay a security deposit and you sign the application that says you will agree not to have any of these types of plastics at the event. So.
Madam
it's-
Mayor, I beg your pardon, I have the ordinance up
and to
right
tell
now.
your vendors, yes, thank you, Mr.
Section,
What section?
yeah, this is ordinance 2413 from 2019. Okay, so section 20-207 is enforcement penalties. A, any permit issued prior to the effective date of this ordinance shall be informed of the ordinance, however, it shall be exempt from enforcement. So that was contemplating before anything that was booked before we passed it. B, the following code violation shall be issued by the city for a violation of this ordinance. A, first violation, the violator shall pay a fine of $250. Second violation, the violator shall pay a fine of $500. Third violation, and any subsequent violation, the violator shall pay a fine of $1,000. Any violation shall serve as grounds to revoke the deposit for the permanent event. A violation may also serve as grounds for refusal to issue a permit for the event or the applicant for any event in the future. So it's not an automatic revocation.
Okay.
It may serve as grounds, so it is a little kind of, picky choosy, but here it specifies the first violation is $250, second was $500, third and subsequent was $1,000,
Thank you.
with a deposit revoked.
Thank you. So my concern is, and this is 2021, we like 2020, but it's gone. So we have 2021, and we have one of our first events being the MLK event on the City Park at 10th Street. I know that the Kiwanis Park is very busy. I'm not sure if people have been having birthday parties or other events there. And of course, we have the Arts Fest coming up, I think, the second week in February. So my thing is, I see Mr. Kralski's point of view in terms of enforcement. When do we become arbitrary and capricious, city attorney? When somebody has a great big event, one weekend, all the environmentalists or all the whatever pink hats or whoever the bird people have an event, and then nobody goes out, and then the next week something happens, and every single one of those events, people feel like they're targeted. When does it become arbitrary? When does are we assured that Mr. Kralski and his team or police department or community services, neighborhood services, which is code enforcement, when do we know that they are going to be looking at each person, or should we tell these people that there's gonna be an hour during your time when you're here where somebody's definitely gonna come and look at your event or look at the booths that you have sublet to other people. And we will be enforcing our ordinance which relates to your activity.
Yes. No.
I know that it's
Actually,
late.
we are not arbitrary and capricious until we are arbitrary and capricious. The way it works is this: a police officer driving down the street doesn't have to give every single car speeding a ticket, but if he observes a car speeding and gives them a ticket, as long as it's not because he's being arbitrary and selecting that person for a non-protected reason, it's totally legal. Just as Jim said, he's not supposed to be at every single event. But if a representative of Stuart goes to an event and they're violating the ordinance, by the way, let's change this ordinance from plastic to it's an event and they're serving high school kids Jack Daniels. Is that going to be arbitrary and capricious if we don't check every event to make sure they're not doing that? Of course not. It's just easier to say it's a violation right away. So the question is, when does the commission want to start enforcing it? And how badly do they want to revoke the security deposit?
So what if we give out written warnings to known violators that have occurred in the recent past? And moving forward, we stress compliance on city property with any of these events. And we start enforcing it.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner McDonald.
I agree with Merritt, except for one small thing is I think it's kind of hard to look back and go back and say, you did something a month ago and I'm gonna give you a warning for it. I think we need to have a period.
Educational warnings?
A period of like 30 days or a month.
We had a 2-year, that's what we did in the ordinance, was the first 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, the first 2
Well,
years
see, I
were-
wasn't here when you did the ordinance, so I
Right.
don't know what you have been doing on that, so. But if, but going back in time, I think that's a challenge, just to go to the, not to pick on the green market and say, go to the green market folks and say, there was a vendor here, this guy, one of the guys had, it's hard to do that versus we have to kind of have a forward-looking approach to the warnings if that's what you want to do.
Well,
I think we've only had the one event, and I mean, we can address that with them directly.
exactly.
And we have.
We can address,
You should be aware that this has been addressed with those two organizations. The one event, I will be honest with you, I did not go to, and I have no way of knowing what or how, was the boat show.
Yeah.
Well, again, we can't pull over every car that is speeding, but we can hear it from the public, and I think we have had about 2 years of education on this as best we can. COVID has set this back, but we can communicate directly with, in an educational manner, ACEs, for the MLK event, and the Green Market, I know is aware. I've spoken to Mr. Osborne about it. And moving forward, we enforce it.
There is one other thing. There needs to be whoever the plastic police is going to be, they're probably, there's going to be there needs to be some education as to whether or not straws are made of cellophane or plastic or if there's a patron that decides to come by and the patron just has a plastic straw because he went over to 7-Eleven or wherever he went to and he brings it to the event, I mean, there's a myriad of.
Along those lines, Mr. Josky, that would obviously be a defense. If we cited the Green Market and the Green Market owner came in and said, that wasn't our straw, that was a guy that had gone to Burger King and he was walking along with a Burger King cup and a Burger King straw, clearly the magistrate wouldn't convict him of the violation. But to me, and the straw thing is complicated as you point out, but our ordinance as it relates to special events isn't straws.
Right.
I mean, it's the styrofoam cup, the plastic lid, it's across the board, so it's a lot easier to observe a violation on it than the straw thing, because you're right, synthetic straws are the the straws nowadays that are biodegradable look exactly like plastic straws.
And, you know, I think you understand that community services is a fairly broad department as it is. Typically, we're in the recreation and promotional type businesses and not necessarily in a regulatory mode. If we're going to go out there with a little pad of paper and start charging people $500 for violations, we'll need training.
Hey, Jim.
Okay. Are you saying something,
It's been a long
Commissioner
night,
McDonald?
but I think there's probably a YouTube video on how to identify straws that you probably want to watch because you're going to be looking for them for a while.
That issue is my issue, so
Yeah.
disregard what Jim just said. I'll take care of it.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that we've had the ordinance and we've had 2 years, and here we are saying that we don't know how to enforce it. So I think that we need to work, staff, city manager, we need to work on something and make sure that staff knows what they're doing and that our public is fully aware of how they need to comply. Are there any discussions on this matter? Further discussions on this matter? Are there any comments on the Zoom, Mr. Paul? Okay, no other comments on the discussion and deliberation item. Mr. Meyer, you brought this up, and Mr. City Manager, do you think you have enough information to move forward, or do you have anything, Mr. Meyer, to summarize anything that you want?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, again, I think we need to identify who is going to be the plastic police. We need to.
Those are my jobs. I will take care of it.
Okay. And we also need to, I'm looking at it on Municode, and I could swear that we made a change before it was adopted, but to the point of somebody bringing something in to a permitted event from outside the event, I thought we had struck that somebody would be penalized if they brought it in from outside.
It says sell and distribution. So
May bring or otherwise distribute. So I guess I'm signaling that I'm open to us, now that we're seeing it out in the wild. Do we need to edit this to make it a little bit better, clearer to enforce? So we're obviously not done with this. We have to keep looking at it.
Thank you. Is there any other question regarding this specific last discussion and deliberation item? Hearing none, and with the instructions given to the city manager, I would ask that we adjourn. We're adjourned. Thank you.
I feel like it's